All right, good evening and welcome to regular meeting of council for Monday, January 31st, the last day of January. Very sure a lot of people are happy this is the last day of January, as it has been a challenging month. We're going to go with the O Canada, followed by the land acknowledgement by the Deputy Mayor, Bill Phillips.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. Carton bras et porter le pays, il sait porter la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Over to you, Councillor Phillips.
Thank you. The land on which council meets today is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Acknowledging this is a reminder that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendship of Indigenous people.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Phillips. And I would like to welcome on behalf of St. Catharines City Council, new Councillor Robin McPherson, who is joining us after being sworn in by our City Clerk, Bonnie Nistico-Dunk. Councillor McPherson, a downtown councillor with the St. Patrick's Ward, joining Councillor Porter. Councillor McPherson is maybe still currently, but the chair of the BIA. She has been an active member of the BIA, and she is now former chair of the Downtown Business Association. She's been involved as a member of the Committee of Adjustments here in St. Catharines, and she has also been very active on the Heritage Committee for a number of years, and she brings a lot of wealth and understanding and knowledge about many issues, including what's happening in the downtown space. So just want to officially welcome to our council, Councillor Robin McPherson. Yay, thumbs up.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I want to offer condolences to the family of Earl McNeil. He was a World War II veteran, served in the Canadian Navy, very active in our community. He was one of the founders and president of St. Catharines Junior B Falcons. He was the commissioner of the St. Catharines Legion hockey. He was also very involved in a number of different organizations here in our community. His last award that he had received was as elected in the St. Catharines Sports Hall of Fame. An outstanding individual who served his country and served our country and served our community. And I just wanted to, on behalf of our community, offer condolences to the McNeil family and a note of gratitude for what he had done for our community to make it a better place. I also would like to acknowledge what had happened to Councillor Porter on overnight from Saturday to Sunday. And on behalf of St. Catharines Council, staff, and our community, I do want to state that acts of violence against anyone, including elected officials, will never be tolerated in our community. This was a deliberate and criminal act of vandalism aimed to intimidate Councillor Porter, and there is no room for this behavior in our city. This is one of a growing list of incidences to elected officials over the last 6 months, and I'm disheartened to see that people in our community feel that resorting to acts of violence and vandalism are acceptable ways to express themselves. This is not who we are, and this is not who we will ever become as a city. I will know, and as councillors know, that Councillor Porter is a courageous elected official in St. Catharines. She stands up to call out injustices, racism, and bigotry. She stands up for her constituents and those that are often left on the outside of our community. These last 2 years have been an extreme challenge for everyone in our community. Tensions have never been higher over a number of issues and concerns, but we all need to step back and refocus on being better at bringing people together. I believe we have an amazing city, much like all of council does, but clearly we have work to do. The way to start is being more respectful to each other, and we need to remember that we are all neighbors and that we should treat each other as such. And so to Councillor Porter, to you and your family, our thoughts are with you, and you know that you have the support of council and all of our community. In terms of what's happening out there in this sort of big world, I was misrepresented on the GoFundMe page. And so it was brought to my attention by a journalist from Victoria, BC, that I was listed on the GoFundMe page as a supporter of the convoy, that it had made a contribution. It made up positions that I have never taken. It used a photo of me in my mayor's with my chain of office. It misspelt my name. And it was a deliberate attempt to spread misinformation using my voice. And this serves as an important reminder to the public and our residents to be vigilant about imposter posts and social media accounts. And it's also a reminder to be very wary of misinformation created for the purpose of confusing the public and inflaming the collective resolve to address the COVID pandemic. This is just one small example of how an individual here in St. Catharines, the mayor of our community, how someone is able to take an image, take a name, go onto a GoFundMe page, make a whole bunch of comments that are completely inaccurate, and then have other people believe that that was indeed me making those comments. So shows you what's happening in this world of ours. I want to turn the subject just to housing. Recently, I joined the Ontario Big City Mayors for a virtual summit with Premier Ford and Minister Clark. The discussion about housing affordability and supply is a critical one affecting communities all across Ontario. We need to rely on all government and community partners to address this challenge. Transformative change won't happen overnight, as these are complex issues that require coordination and collaboration. But we need to keep moving forward, and we need to keep moving forward together. Last Friday, the mayors and CAOs of Niagara, we met on this issue, and we are looking at a cooperative approach to make progress on these issues here in our communities of Niagara. I'm looking forward to the creation of a working group of CAOs with representation from across the region. There's urgency to this issue, and while every municipality has its own unique challenges, there are overlapping issues that we can all address through a coordinated effort. I'm looking forward to the working group's input and bringing ideas back to the next Mayors of Niagara meeting so that we can look at the next steps that are within our jurisdiction as municipalities. And I do know that our CAO, David Oakes, will be a member of that working group. So I want to thank him for stepping up. I also want to thank Minister Carolyn Mulroney for the boost in gas tax funding for 2022. This year, the city will receive $2.46 million, more than the anticipated, thanks to a one-time top-up of about $580,000. While the boost was appreciated, we need to continue to advocate to support transit systems who are continuing to feel the effects of the low ridership since the beginning of the pandemic. I also want to thank Councillor Littleton for representing the province, for representing our community to the province for a virtual presentation on the province's Niagara budget deliberations. And while we understand the importance of these restrictions in the face of the latest wave of the pandemic, the timing came just weeks after the city finalized its 2022 budget. So Councillor Littleton was able to articulate our position, which is the request for additional COVID relief dollars to help manage our finances, since the only way that we can raise funds is through property tax increases. And we know that the challenges that we face, increasing property taxes will be a challenge for many members of our community. I'm going to go on. We also have congratulations to one of our own, Jasmine, who is a fighter in the UFC. She won in one of her first debut bouts against Kay Hansen. So I just want to say to Jasmine, congratulations, and looking forward to additional bouts that she'll be with under the UFC contract. And this is great, as she is from St. Catharines and she still trains in Niagara. And congratulations to Jim Mayards on receiving the Lifetime Achievement Award for Rowing Canada. Jim first joined St. Catharines Rowing in 1949. And since then, he has played a key role in developing Henley Island to what it is today. In the 1950s, he developed a St. Catharines High School rowing program, which will become Schoolboy. It would become the foundation of the strong St. Catharines High School rowing program that has graduated countless athletes into both university and Olympic sport. And Gung Hoi Fat Choi for best wishes for a Lunar New Year for those celebrating in our community. And with that, I'm going to go over to snow. I'm going to turn it over to CAO Oakes to talk about the snow issue that we faced 2 weeks ago today. And Dave's going to provide a bit of an update. And what we're going to do before we get into the agenda, Dave's going to provide an update. Director Smith will be talking about just what happened on that sort of 48 hours. And then we can take some questions from council about the snow event. We're not going to let the discussion go on too long because there's not a motion in front of us, but I think it's important for CAO Oakes to hear from council about the concerns that they had heard from their residents, because there were many. But before we get to that, I want CAO Oakes to explain some stuff and then work with Director Smith to provide some context. Over to CAO Oakes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to council. 2 weeks ago, at our last meeting, we were right in the middle of the blizzard of 22, and the 2 weeks since has been a very challenging time, I think, for all of us, for our operations team, for the residents, for council. And I've had numerous calls, emails from, I think, every councillor around the Horseshoe regarding the snow removal process and how we were able to or weren't able to get to certain areas. And one of the things that we wanted to provide council tonight, and to the general public for that matter, was really an overview of the event itself, which Daryl will provide. But more importantly, the event itself, which was a generational type of an event, was something that once we got into the operations and as we moved through the last several weeks, there are some areas for opportunity. We are looking to do a debrief with our staff, our entire team from the front line in operations and municipal works, for the great work that the plow operators have been able to do in the sidewalk clearing and our partner contractors, to the staff who were answering the phones and the many complaints that were coming forward, as well as the staff in the mayor's office who had to field a lot. And I know councillors did as well. We wanted to really use the next several weeks in our debrief to do a review, and we're actually going to bring a report back to council to provide some of that information and feedback as we move forward, because a lot of these concerns and issues we hear, and we're working towards trying to deal with some of those circumstances. In particular, I know in the next several weeks, and the next several days for that matter, we're in for another significant snow event. So the public needs to be, it's our own crews that have to work through this, but it's also the public that needs to play a role as well on their own properties. But we are committed to, as a corporation, to be able to work towards and develop, new standards and any opportunities for improvement to do so. So we're going to be taking the next, as I mentioned, the next few weeks. But before we get into any questions, I wanted to give Director Smith Daryl an opportunity to provide council an update on the situation that we had 2 weeks ago. Daryl?
Thank you. And I'll ask Evan, I've prepared a short presentation to share some information, and I've asked, thank you, Evan, for putting it up there. So just to give you an idea of where we're at, we have about 1,300 lane kilometers of roads within the city. Of that, approximately 154 of that are regional roads that we plow on their behalf. Included in that, we have 120 kilometers of sidewalks that we plow, and there's about 475 kilometers more that is the responsibility of private homeowners and businesses. So let's get into the storm itself. So the storm was pretty massive, so sometimes we don't remember that we actually had a snow event the day before the storm started. We had 10 centimeters, so we were actually activated on the Saturday before the large storm. The snow event forecast changed on January 16th, and all of a sudden we got notified that they were forecasting a blizzard. During the peak of that snowfall, so we had about 60 centimeters fall between Sunday evening and early Monday morning. During the peak of that fall, we were getting rates of snowfall greater than 6 centimeters an hour. That is a substantial snow rate, as you can imagine. In all, we had about 75 centimeters fall, and staff were deployed from the onset of the storm. And we did have to make some decisions going through the storm, even at the start of the storm, as to when do we deploy the staff. As you may recall from previous presentations on snow removal, there are maximum numbers of hours that staff can work through this, even in a declared snow event. And that's 16 hours per day or 70 hours in any given week. And so one of the issues that we have when we're having a large event like this is if we deploy too early, we start to burn through our driving hours before we get the bulk of the snow falling. And we start to lose operators during that time period. Next slide, please. So normally for 10 centimeters snow events or smaller events, when we do a deployment, we go in and we clean the whole street. We do a run through each section and we finish it off. And we do it that way because it's the most efficient way to manage the costs, and we can do it within our timeframes on small events. In this event, we quickly realized that that wasn't going to work. If we took that approach, we would have had large areas of the city with no access for greater than 5 days. So the municipal works management team changed. We pivoted our approach and we said, let's punch through an emergency access to as much of the area as possible. And by doing that, we were able to get emergency access to the majority of the city within 24 hours of the snow stopping. Now, there were some issues with roads, and I sent an email to council previously on that. That's getting reported completed that weren't completed. And part of that is due to some of the operational challenges we face, such as the lack of real-time information. We are working on ways to fix that, obviously. It should be noted that throughout the storm, we maintained an operation from the start to currently, except for one mandatory rest period that we did about 5 days after our response started. So we've been basically going 24/7 for over 2 weeks now. And at that rate, it's a challenge to keep both equipment and skilled operators in the field. And both staff and contracted drivers can get burned out from that, even if they haven't used their maximum driving hours. Next slide, please. So what's our ongoing cleanup look like? Well, there is insufficient area within the roadways to store this volume of snow. And so to date, we have loaded and removed approximately 1,300 dump trucks full of snow from the roads and sidewalks. That's over 16,000 cubic meters of snow. It is a slow, labor-intensive process that requires supervisory staff, operators, truck drivers, and traffic control support. Next slide, please. So here's a small example that we took out of the data that we have. This is for snow removal from William Street and Queen Street from St. Paul to King. And to do that small area of the city, it took 10 hours overnight from 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. It required 2 skid steers, 1 backhoe, 1 front end loader, 3 triaxle dump trucks, 7 equipment operators, 2 traffic control staff. And as you can imagine, the cost is significant. So this green area represents just 0.72 lane kilometers or 0.06% of the road network that the city must maintain. So you can get an idea of the amount of effort that is required to keep this operation going. Next slide, please. So we have 2 short videos here just showing cleanup operations. The first is showing a local street where we have a front end loader breaking up the large portions of snow and pushing them out, a backhoe loading the truck, and then of course the truck will haul it away. And you see a small skid steer operation, 2 skid steers operating on a main street. What you can't see in this video is the traffic control that's required to do this on a main street. We have to block a lane. We have to have a blocker truck. We have to have proper signage, all of which has to be put out and maintained through this event. Next slide, please. Okay, there we go. This video you've seen before. This we did when we did our level of service report back early last year, and just showing a truck trying to get down and plow a street with nowhere near as much snow as we had in this event and park cars on the side of the road. Thank you. So I just have a few closing comments with respect to this. As the CIO stated, this was a generational snow event. So there's a lot of lessons to be learned. There is no one in municipal works that has been through a snow event of this magnitude in their career, including myself, and I'm 35 plus years in at this point. We are going to conduct, as the CAO stated, a complete internal debrief, and we will be bringing back a thorough report to council. Councillors have been sharing their thoughts and comments throughout this event, and I welcome you to continue to do so. And please send them to the CAO and myself so we can take those into consideration as we take part in our debrief and prepare a report back for your consideration. And finally, as was stated, even as we work to complete the cleanup from this event, a winter storm watch has been issued for Wednesday night into Thursday with another 35 centimeters of snow forecasted at this point. This would be a major event even if there was no snow on the ground. It's going to be compounded by the fact that there is no place to put this snow when we plow it. It's going to exacerbate the situation and draw out the response to this storm. I would like to remind the residents that may be listening here to me tonight to be prepared and have an emergency plan in place. There's lots of information on the City of St. Catharines website through Fire and Emergency Services on some of the things you should consider. But just briefly, you should look and see if you've got your prescriptions need refilling, that you've got plenty of food in the house, all of those things, just to make sure that you are safe in this event. I promise you and council that we will do our best to manage this event as quickly as possible. But I am asking right now, if we get the forecasted event, we are going to be asking for patience from residents because it will take a longer time than normal for this size of event to clear it. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Smith, and beyond, on behalf of council, thank you to all the crews that have worked tirelessly for the last 2 weeks trying to clear this snow. I can only imagine working 16-hour days in a truck and how tiring that could be. So just let the crews know that we're very thankful for all the work that they've done. So The key date is February 15th, which will be the debrief session. So we've got about another 15 minutes. So councillors, when you're making comment or asking questions, just be mindful of time. Okay. Councillor Townsend, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to CAO and Director Smith and John. I want to send my appreciation for all the hard work that's been done. I know you did receive some of my phone calls and emails, but I do appreciate your honesty and transparency regarding this process and the hard work of all the workers who have been working around the clock. I do have a few questions in regards to the communication that did go out. Council was informed that the snow would be cleared, I believe it was on Tuesday at 11 p.m. So we were giving that information to our residents who were preparing to go to work the next day. I'm just trying to understand why the communication was put out that everything would be cleared by 11. And then further to that, the next morning, there was the communication from City Hall that did tell all residents that all roads were cleared when in fact that wasn't the actual situation.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So as I explained, our current GPS capabilities does not allow us to have live GPS reporting of our snow clearing event. The system is maintained through it's actually a paper system. There's no other way to put it. And in this event, what we would do is you give drivers the route map. They have a route map and they're going in and doing the route. Excuse me. In this event, we had contractors that hadn't worked for us before, had never really plowed snow before. They were going in and they weren't familiar with the routes. And then, as you can imagine, this type of snowfall, the amount of snow to be moved without familiar contractors, routes got missed. However, when the sheet gets put in, it's reported as the section being complete. So that's how the reporting mistake was made, reporting that the roads were complete when they actually weren't. So we've taken some steps to correct that. We are working on our GPS capabilities. We are going to be going through and doing that. That's still going to take some time, but we've altered our quality control method to this, where we're going to assign some additional supervisors to be double checking this work as it goes forward. So it should mitigate this problem in the future.
Thank you. And through you, I guess my concern is that contractors were completing the work. Taxpayers were paying the contractors to complete the work that wasn't completed. Do they still get paid for not completing? Example, in my ward specific, there was an area over Meredith Drive where the road wasn't completed. So the contractor gets paid for not completing the road that they were paid to clear. Am I correct on that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the contractor gets paid for the time they're pushing snow. So they would have been pushing snow the whole time they were out. Even though they missed roads, they still worked. They were unfamiliar with the routes, so they couldn't do it in a continuous method. They would have still had to do that work, and it would have still taken longer, and they would have been paid for that work as it was done. So they didn't get paid for work they didn't do. They were still working, but they missed roads that were on the list.
Okay, thank you. I do have a couple more. I want to ask, when this storm hit, we had 4 or 5 days notice that it was going to be coming to the city. We knew it was going to be a significant storm event. What does the preparation look like? Were contractors contacted ahead of the storm? Like, at what point does the city start reaching out to contractors saying, we do have a significant storm event? What does that process look like for the public watching right now?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, so obviously one of the things we do when we have a significant event forecasted is we make sure all the equipment is ready to go. All the plows and trucks are loaded with sand and salt as appropriate. We don't necessarily reach out to contractors until shortly before they need them, because we don't have contractors on standby. We have contractors that come to us when they're available to come to us. So I shouldn't say most municipalities, a lot of municipalities in the area are after the same contractors, but they include standby in their contract with those contractors. So those contractors are first responsible to those municipalities. So that makes it hard for us to prep and say, can you please hold and be ready to go? Because they have that contractual obligation with other municipalities. With respect to an event, you actually, other than preparing the equipment and having the drivers ready to go, you can't really do anything until the snow falls. You can't put plows out on the road, obviously, before there's snow to plow. And even in this type of event, you would not pre-sand or pre-salt in this type of event. And so that's basically due to the nature of the beast, you're in a very reactive mode.
So I guess my concern through the mayor is that last year we had a very similar situation where it took days to clear out roads in the city. It's, and last year, staff had debriefed, they talked about the issues. Council was informed that they'd ironed out the issues. Fast forward this year, we talked about obviously was a significant snowfall. And it just doesn't seem like it was fully planned properly because we had people that were waiting up to a week to have their road cleared. And it can't continue like this. So my question to the CAO or to Director Smith is, what is it that we need to do here to make sure that we can get this cleared faster? Do we need more staff? Do we need more plows? I'm trying to get an understanding because these are the questions that residents ask me as a councillor, asking why is it taking so long? What is it that we need to do to make it so that we can get this done in a timely, effective manner, and so that people aren't waiting that long to have their roads cleared? And my concern is because this week we're going to get another 40, maybe another 50 centimeters of snow, a lot of snow. And you fast forward, you look at climate change. There's the unknown as to what the snowfall is going to be like going forward. But we as a council and as a city, we need to be prepared for this type of stuff. You look at what other municipalities do. They do have the GPS tracking system. A lot of other municipalities did clear out a lot faster than St. Catharines. And I'm just trying to figure out what is it that we need to do to get, what is it that we need to do in order to make sure that this doesn't continue year after year?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, maybe I'll start, and then if CAO Oaks has something to add, he can add. So from a storm perspective, when I've talked to the other municipalities in the area, yes, there are some municipalities that are further along than us, but there's also some municipalities that are farther behind than us. Most municipalities are in this response to some degree at this time, like St. Catharines. But this is obviously some discussion around resourcing, obviously. And I would caution, we're going to actually do a report, but I would caution that you don't necessarily want to resource for an event like this. Because if you resource for an event like this, there's going to be many, many years where you're going to have those resources available that you're not going to need them. Now, there are some things that we can do and we are going to do and we're going to look at with respect to contractors through the debrief and having contractors available, and the consideration of, again, providing standby to contractors to ensure that we have contractors available to us, which will help the process significantly. We are going to look at how we respond to events. So as I stated previously in the presentation, we did change how we normally respond to event. And if we had have done this change to the event that we had on Family Day, we would have been through that much quicker than we were this time, which is why we punched through the access to the majority of the city as possibly as we can. So yes, we do understand the situation, and we are going to be coming back to council with some recommendations around what we can do in the future to ensure that we have a more timely response.
Okay, I'll yield the floor through the mayor to my other colleagues. I'll just quickly say that I think that resources are needed. We need to get more people out to work and get this cleared faster. It might have to be something that, more plows, more workers, and maybe removing street parking during the winter months, which would allow for, as we just saw the video, to allow for plows to get down. But thank you, and thank you for the hard work.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend. Councillor Miller.
Yeah, thank you. We get 15 minutes each, right?
I apologize. Let's keep it tight, councillors, because let's keep going.
I'll save most of my comments, I guess, for that debrief. And certainly thank you, staff. Can't imagine what that was like for those few days. those guys in the trucks and management and people answering the phone. So, and then having to go home and shovel for hours like the rest of us did, I'm sure. So definitely huge thanks. I think one thing we should keep in mind is we had this conversation last year about more resources. We came to a decision we didn't want to do that. I'm not really sure how we could change anything, as Director Smith said, but I guess one question I have, good residents ask, Councillor Littleton and I think hear a lot about our cul-de-sacs, as I'm sure everyone does, just because a lot of them are one way in, one way out, specifically around Mackenzie King and Barbican Trail area. And specific to Barbican Trail, I think it's frustrating for residents because it's off St. David's Road, which is cleared by the region, and it's within sight of Thorold's roads, which are often cleared before because they have less roads to get to and stuff. I certainly appreciate that. But do we look at partnering with any of those other municipalities to come in and clear ours if they are done, if their equipment isn't under use anymore?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So we actually did reach out to other municipalities during this event. Some of the, as council may be aware, the further west you got, the more snow that they had. So we were reaching out to other municipalities that got less snow than us. Unfortunately, they didn't really have any resources available to us until the point where we actually were able to maintain it ourselves. So it didn't really help in that instance, but we will continue to do that as required.
Okay, I guess the only other couple little notes, I guess, was to look again at those one way in, one way out access points, because I think for residents it's a concern emergency wise, and Barbican was missed, unfortunately, I think, by one of the contractors, so that certainly exacerbated things. I realize that won't always happen, but just to consider those again. I think the communications is a big one. Whether it's like real-time reporting on the website, giving people a place to see what roads have been cleared. I know that's probably a technology investment, but I think that would give people a little more peace of mind. Certainly that day was a good example of my push for why city councilors should be full-time, tongue in cheek on that one. But I think relying on us to sort of communicate a lot of this stuff to residents is problematic too, because we don't have the information, and I know you don't either. So I think that cleaning up maybe or resourcing some of the information around this might mitigate a lot of these issues. But again, I'll save the real specifics, I guess, for when we're really getting into the nitty-gritty of it. And again, thank you. It's not really a criticism of our team. Again, it's generational thing here, but there's always learnings, I'm sure. So thanks.
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Miller, for the brevity and for the salient points. Councillor Williamson, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the director. I'll just stick to a couple items. And I gather this relationship with our private contractors, that's going to be discussed further at this debrief session. Are we at a disadvantage in comparison to some other local municipalities who may be euchering us on this, or is that something we need to look at? Is that what you're alluding to?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So when you have standby in your contracts with your hired equipment and contractors, they are obligated to have that equipment available within an hour's notice on standby. When you don't have that clause, you have no obligation from any contractor to have equipment available for you. So that's why when we first went out and went through our hired equipment list, we were only able to get 8 pieces of hired equipment in because every other municipality was using the contractors as well. And so that's when we broadened our search and made the decision to go to the non-traditional contractors, because we knew we weren't going to get our traditional snow clearing contractors in quickly. And yes, even though it caused us some problems, it helped immensely in getting through this event by having heavy construction contractors in working with us. So yes, that is definitely something we will be considering through our debrief process.
Good, and hopefully the experience they had in the last storm will put them in better situation for maybe later this week. One of the things that sticks in my craw, and was you mentioned it during the throes of this, was residents who are snow blowing their snow from their driveways and sidewalks back onto the street. I just wonder, and there's 2 things that local residents control, and we have bylaw enforcement to deal with, and that's on-street parking and snow being blown back onto the road. So I'll yield. We know we're all appreciative of your work, and I think that's been stated. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williamson. Councillor Littleton.
Oh, could you give the director the opportunity to respond to the blowing snow onto the road?
Yeah, sorry, Director.
And the car parking, please. Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that is an ongoing issue. We are going to be looking at alternatives to snow parking, whether it is an enhanced snow parking or a recommended winter parking ban, some way to make it effective, because it was not effective and it hasn't been effective in the last few events. And snow blowing onto the road is a huge problem, especially when it's this volume of snow. So it will quickly make a street unpassable again, and we'll have to send another piece of equipment back out. We are in the midst of bringing a planned update to the roads bylaw to council in the near future. I don't have the exact date, but it's not too long away. And that will have some enhanced enforcement capabilities in it for us to deal with that in a better manner.
Okay, thank you, Director. Thank you, Councillor Williamson. Councillor Littleton.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thought Councillor Sorrento was before me, but I'll go really quick. I guess my main question is, because I did send through actually my 4 main points that I saw from the storm to talk about that to staff already. But one question I do have is, how do we discern which secondary roads, which order do they go in? Do we look and say, for example, Barbican Trail is one of the comments my ward mate has already alluded to, and it is one that I sent through. The street itself has something like 100, 200 houses. That's like 400 people that got stranded and were not plowed out for a couple of days. 400 people is a lot of people. So if that's a secondary road, how do we prioritize that over, say, another secondary, or not prioritize it over a street that might have 20 houses, for example? Is there some logic here?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the streets are prioritized in order to allow the routes to be completed as quickly as possible, because it would take far more time to go here to one route, then drive down to another road, then drive down to another road. So the routes are designed from start to finish to be run through as quickly as possible to allow all the roads within the section to be cleared. One of the things that I want to do when we have our real-time GPS that we can't do now because it's a paper system, is to do a route rationalization exercise, which may allow us to actually find more efficient routes from a time perspective to get these things done. But the routes are, the priorities are based on traffic volumes, because that's what's set out in the MMS. So the MMS has traffic volumes which determine the class of road. So when we review our road volumes, that may bump up a road that was previously a class 3 road to class 2 or whatever, which would then require a appropriate change in the level of service that's given to that road. So all of those comments that you provided, Councillor Littleton, we will be taking into consideration as part of our debrief.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Littleton. Councillor Sorrento.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Director Smith. Just 2 points, Mr. Mayor. Can you comment on the snow hauling, Director Smith, and how it's impacted resources and time?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, as shown in the presentation, it is a long process to do a snow clearing exercise. Mainly from the perspective of it's a logistical exercise of traffic control, road closures, lane closures. So on certain streets, you can only do it on certain points of time. And it's coordinating all that, again, also with the available trucks to haul the snow. It took us 10 hours to do 0.72 kilometers of a road. So that will give an idea of the volume of effort required. We have been doing that and we'll continue to do that. We have been filling up our snow dump sites, which is also getting to be a bit of an issue at this point, as we are somewhat running out of room. But we will continue that operation as we can throughout the city where required. We are concentrating on those areas that the best example would be those areas that are exempt from snow parking. Those are the areas we're concentrating on because they're exempt from snow parking for a particular reason. There's no boulevards, there's no driveways, there's no place to put the snow. So those are the areas we've been concentrating on with snow clearing at this point.
Okay, and through you, Mr. Mayor, to Director Smith, would you say it's at least, I have a number of about 15,000, up to 15,000 truckloads of snow. Now, is it about 900 to a maximum of 15,000 truckloads? Just to give the public an idea of how much snow hauling.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, it's about 1,300 truckloads to date, about 16,000 cubic meters of snow.
Sorry, yeah, I meant 1,500, not 15,000.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's about 1,300 to the end of day on Saturday. So I know we did some clearing on Sunday and we did some clearing on Monday. So, and we're continuing with the operation. So
okay,
1,300 end of day Saturday.
Thank you. Just one last one through you, Mr. Mayor, to the director. Cole's note version, getting a lot of emails about sidewalks. Can you comment on it very briefly, please?
So we are working on sidewalks. Part of the issue with enforcing sidewalks is we have to have the resources available to clear the sidewalks. And we haven't had city forces that we've been able to release from other duties to get them on bylaw. We are hoping that we can start that exercise tomorrow, but I can't guarantee it at this point. But we will get the bylaw enforcement going as quickly as we can.
Very good. Mr. Mayor, perhaps if your office, chief of staff can send something to the councilors, a pre-next snow event, maybe we can all put it out on our accounts and just tell the public to be patient and just to expect another major snow event. I think that would be very helpful. So thank you, Director. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Sorrento. All right, so we got 5 more councilors. Just if we can keep the comments brief and let's keep moving. Councilor Dodge, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to staff or to the CAO. My question is just, or a comment, is when it comes to, we have secondary roads, main roads and stuff like that. But one of the concerns that's been brought to my attention this time, several times, has been about crosswalks and also school crossings. And I'm not sure who the responsibility falls on, but to have those areas cleared so that people can pass safely and also so that children can get across to the other side of the street, and as well as the crossing guard keeping them safe. And then another, I know that it's a situation where we've had so much snow, but a lot of times the shed roads are so high that you can't see children or people trying to get across the road until they're almost like on the street sort of thing. So I don't know if anybody wants to comment on that now, or if it'll be part of our debrief.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I may, that will be part of our debrief. And we have been in touch with the school board and we are including them in our debrief as well, their comments in our debrief.
Okay, thank you for that. And I'm hoping that the school board will also partner with us, helping to, help in that situation.
Thank you, Councilor Dodge. And we got Councilor Kushner, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The one of the complaints I get is that the regional roads are plowed and they're overplowed. And I understand our standard is to have them pavement bare, but why should they be pavement bare when the local roads, when people can't get to the regional roads? So why not a lesser standard for the regional roads and a better standard for the local roads?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So that is something, again, we are going to be looking at as a debrief. We did receive several comments about the level of service of the main roads versus the secondary roads. Traditionally, and I won't get into this too much because it will be part of the debrief, but traditionally you do the main roads first because it provides the skeleton to get as far around the city for emergency vehicles as possible. And you always try to keep those roads clear to make sure that the emergency vehicles can get to as many areas possible, the hospital, that sort of thing. But we have heard that comment clearly, and we will be taking that into consideration as we go through our debrief and our report back to council.
And my next question is, where are the parked cars? If we have a parking ban, where can these cars that don't have the proper driveways park?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so we do make parking available within our parking structures in the downtown core. We don't have too many facilities or areas outside of the downtown core, and some of the areas where snow parking is exempt. A lot of the problem areas that we have are associated with student housing and the multiple vehicles associated with one house in that area. And those areas, there's really no city alternatives to parking in those areas.
Okay, and the last question is, you talked about standby, and you said some municipalities in the region did better, some did worse. The ones that did better, did they have a standby contract with the private people?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we are gathering that information right now. I have sent out requests for information to all the area municipalities, as well as some other comparator municipalities, asking about that specifically, whether they have standby in their contract, and we'll be able to collate that data for our report coming back.
Okay, so thank you. Thank you for the answers to the questions. I think you've answered them very well. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Councillor Kushner. We're going to do a hard wrap at 7 o'clock. So we've got 4 more councillors. Councillor Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Smith. We had a great conversation, so I won't rehash some of the things that we talked about there that I know are coming in the report. But I'm wondering, in your report, we talked about having contractors on standby. I'm curious to know the ratio of in-house crews to contractors in the other municipalities to see if we're in line as well, that if the other municipalities have about the same amount of staff, like I guess the ratio would be like per population and equipment. That would be good for us to know. Also, the city of Hamilton has a bylaw where there's a cost sharing agreement with the school boards, and the city clears all around the schools, and the school boards actually pay the city to do that. And I did have some complaints about areas around schools, and I don't know what the school board's capacity was to clear it themselves. And if that is something we could look into. This is not your area, but in terms of bylaw enforcement, a lot of the plazas, they cleared their parking lots, but they did not clear their sidewalks at all, which is their responsibility. Places, I'm going to call out the Midtown Plaza for not clearing their sidewalk, which is pedestrian heavy area. I'm hoping that we can address bylaw enforcement for this kind of thing. And then I guess the last point, we talked about the GPS project on the phone, but I'm wondering if they're in the report back, if it could be described, if there's a project manager, if we've got resources internally in our IT department. I don't think this is a project that can run off the side of someone's desk. I think it needs to be, it sounds like there's a whole, investment in a new system that needs to happen. And I don't remember this being in a work plan maybe that I have seen. I'm just wondering if that could be part of it, if we could know the details of that. That's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Porter. Councillor Harris. Go.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the director. So we have a storm coming up, obviously, on Wednesday. What protocols or procedures we put in place, things we've learned from the last one that we could probably minimize the amount of, so is there anything we learned from the last storm that you're going to institute for this upcoming storm? Like perhaps engage contractors and have them ready or on standby?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, you were breaking up a lot, Councillor Harris. So if I missed something in my answer, please let me know. So one of the things we did learn is we have to have a rest period for our staff so we don't burn them out. So we're not going to have overtime operations tomorrow on Tuesday. So we'll accomplish what we can accomplish by 3 p.m. when our day shifts ends, and we will not run an overtime operation Tuesday evening or overtime Tuesday overnight, though we do have a small overnight shift that's on. And that is to make sure that we have drivers available for our event starting on Wednesday. They'll have reset their driving clock, so we'll be able to maximize their use. We will, again, be reaching out to contractors, but that will be a little closer to the event. At this point, again, because they're being paid standby from other municipalities, they will get first crack at the contractors, and we'll have to, again, unfortunately, get what we can get of those crews. And we will also bring back the heavy equipment contractors this time if needed to help. As stated, their experience the last event should help them in this event. We will also institute our higher level of quality control by bringing in additional supervisors to help manage the event, which should help with the communication effort, as well as the making sure the resources are getting to the right spots. Thank you.
I guess just as a follow-up, like, do we not have like an emergency plan, emergency coordinator? Like if we have some like a toxic spill, we can mobilize this team. They all meet at the fire hall, and people's role, certain people have that role. And when we have a major event like this, would it make sense to mobilize that team? So it's not just you answering calls, there's other people answering calls, people issuing communication to the media or communication to the community. Is that something that you guys have been talking about, that perhaps you can mobilize that team or have people work through this? Does that make sense?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is definitely something we are looking at with this debrief, is the communications involved with it. But the communications, whoever is doing the communication to council, whoever is doing the communications to the public, the information has to be coming from the frontline supervisors in our systems. And so we need to make sure that is right, to pass the proper information up, and then expand our communication effort as required, depending on the nature of the event.
Okay, I guess I apologize. Maybe the mayor can, I can't remember what that actual group is called, as emergency.
Oh, the
What is
emergency
it
command team. So
Yeah.
I'll go to CAO Oaks, and if in terms of what would trigger having the emergency command center in operation on a weather event like this.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So just to provide a bit of clarity, so the event on 2 weeks ago happened overnight at a very, very quick period of time. Moving forward, in preparation for Wednesday, we do have our emergency management coordinator, Judy Green, working with Daryl and his team on communications plan. We've been meeting. We have meetings scheduled for tomorrow and Wednesday with the emergency control group Wednesday afternoon to plan out that as the forecast gets closer to us. So all of those are in place. We typically in a snow event wouldn't activate the emergency operation center. However, because we're already activated through COVID, we meet weekly, and we've initiated that process as of today for this coming week, as you know, as a learning from the last event.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Harris. We've got two more councillors. Let's make it quick. Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Daryl, you mentioned some communities have the operators on standby. We don't. Is that simply a matter of cost? Why don't we have the contractors on standby like others?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I was not here when that decision was made. That was prior to my time with the city, so I don't have the history. But again, this was a generational event, so we've had several years where we've had hardly any snow. And when you have several years in a row of hardly any snow, sometimes you make the decisions operationally for a budget saving of taking standby, because there is a cost associated with standby that has to be paid, and that will be part of what we look at going forward. From a resource perspective and a level of service perspective, is that a cost that we will be recommending to council to include going forward?
We have the city divided into 20 sections. Do we deploy the same staff into sections? Like, I'll use Grantham as an example, Fort Wire East. Do you have the same plow person going down there this week as we did last week, so that that person is aware of streets? Or do you have a team of plows going into sections so that they are familiar with the area?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is something we try to do, but it's not something we can guarantee. The reason why is, especially on overtime, we are calling staff in, and we will get different staff respond to a call in on different nights, just because of their own personal life and their own home life, which they need to take into account. So we can't guarantee that on any event we will have the same staff members in for that event, and therefore we have to deploy based on the resources we have available. So we cannot make that guarantee.
Okay, and lastly, to CAO Oaks, we used to, obviously windrows are a problem. I go and shovel the windrows, and 5 minutes later the plow goes by and fills it in again. We used to have an organization, I don't know if it was Mainstream or who it was, who were employed by the city to go out to shovel windrows for people who had medical problems, seniors. Do we still have that? I haven't heard of that recently.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I may, I know Councillor directed the question to the CAO. We still have that in place, and we still have those staff, that resource responding where we can. There is a process, it's an application, but really it's just notifying us who you are. We put it on a list, and we have a list forward where we use that. It is for seniors or people with disabilities to have some assistance in that area.
How many people are available to do that type of work, do you know?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't know off the top of my head, but I can provide council with that information.
I think that's something that our residents really need to know, because it's a very valuable service that's provided, and it's free of charge, obviously.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips.
Up to us. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And then we're going last but not least, and batten cleanup, and it's going to be quick. Councillor Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be very brief. Just one question on snow parking. The forecasters seem to be getting pretty good, I find, the last few years of telling us when we're going to get snow. In this particular case, we're being told we could get quite a large snowfall by Thursday. Would it not make sense to declare the snow parking early on so that bylaw officers can ticket or can tow as required, because people leaving their cars there, I know, is a real hazard for you. Yet once a big snowfall happens, then you can't get out and do it.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if you recall in the report that we brought forward on snow parking, we stated that we would issue snow parking when we were about to go into those areas that were required to clear. So we did issue snow parking earlier than we normally do for this event. We did call it, I believe, the Sunday before, actually at the start of right at the start of the event. Normally we do it a little later. And we will be doing that in this case. So I anticipate we're going to see what the forecast, if the forecast changes tomorrow. And in our discussion, I anticipate that we will be issuing snow parking early on Wednesday before the snow hits, to allow people to find a spot to get their cars off the road.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Councillor Garcia. Thanks for all the questions. And again, thank you to Director Smith for the crews and what they're doing. Clearly, what we've heard from council is there's areas that we are looking for additional information. So is the public. So I'm sure that when the report is complete and back in front of council, we'll have an opportunity to discuss it in more detail. So now we'll go to the adoption of the agenda. So Evan can turn on the live now. We can go live on YouTube and just kidding. Okay, so I'll turn it over to the clerk to do the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you this evening, the following amendments have been made to the agenda. First, the city received notice from Brian Child, president from Reptilia, that they have withdrawn their application at this time for the exemption to bylaw 95-212. And since the application has been withdrawn, tonight's public meeting for item 7.1 is canceled. Item 2, the motion for 6.2 council correspondence is being amended to add the following clause: that council appoint the individual outlined in the confidential memorandum from the deputy clerk to the Arts and Culture Advisory Committee. The following items have been placed in council's sugar sink folder this evening, and the same memorandum that I just told you about. And we have 3 reports from the clerk's office at the Niagara Region, 003 regarding Community Homelessness Prevention Initiative Investment Plan 2022-2023, 006 regarding every other week garbage collection diversion impact and the full year analysis, and 008 regarding Niagara official plan proposed draft for consultation. And we also have correspondence from Mr. Kevin Struband, President of Lincoln County Humane Society regarding Reptilia's application. We have again correspondence from Brian Child regarding the withdrawal of their application at this time. A resolution from the town of Lincoln supporting Vision Zero, and a resolution from the town of Lincoln supporting transit consolidation. And that's tonight's amendments. Thank you.
Okay, so I need a mover and a seconder for the agenda. Moved by Councillor Phillips, seconded by Councillor Townsend. All in favor? Okay, that's carried. We have the motion. We have the minutes from January 17th, 2022, and the minutes from the Budget Standing Committee, January 24th, 2022. Can I have a motion? Mover and a seconder is Councillor Littleton, second by Councillor Kushner. Any comments on the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. Any conflicts of interest for tonight? Seeing no conflicts of interest. Anyone moving anything off consent? We have 2 items on consent. Anything moving off, anything off consent? I need a motion to approve the consent agenda. Councillor Dodge, seconded by Councillor Sorrento, and I will turn it over to the clerk for the consent agenda.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Tonight's consent agenda is 6.1 Financial Management Services, the Director, 2022 Water and Wastewater Budget and Associated Rates. Approval of this report will set the public meeting for the council meeting of February 14th to consider the water and wastewater budget and associated fees for 2022, and legal and clerk services, Office of the City Clerk, Council Correspondence. Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
Councillor Garcia.
Yes.
Councillor Harris.
Yes.
Councillor Kushner.
Yes.
Councillor Littleton.
Yes.
Councillor McPherson.
Yes.
Councillor Miller.
Yet there's someone in between us now. Yes.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Porter.
Yes.
Councillor Sorrento.
Yes.
Councillor Townsend.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
And Mayor Sendzik.
Yes.
Carried.
Okay, we're going to go right to the discussion reports. We have 9.1, Engineering, Facilities, Environmental Services, Transportation Services, Director amending agreement for intermunicipal agreement related to Vision Zero. Prior to discussing the report, council will receive a presentation from the Niagara region regarding the Vision Zero program. And also I will bring on CAO Oakes after the presentation from Director Ryle from the region, just to give some context for our St. Catharines direction that we can move forward in. So I call on Carolyn Ryle, Director, Transportation Services Division, and Beth Greens, Acting Associate Director, Financial Reporting and Analysis, to present. And welcome to both of you to St. Catharines City Council. Thank you for coming to present on a very important matter, one that I would hope all municipalities embrace with open arms. So turning it over to the presenters.
Thank you, Mayor Senzik, and thank you, City Council, for having us here this evening. I just wanted to first confirm you can see the presentation just before we get going.
Okay, we can't see it yet, so you will have Evan figuring out what we can do on our side.
I just want to make sure it's up.
Councillor Coordinator McGinty, are you with us?
Yeah, so they do have the ability to screen share right now. So they should be able to share screen it. There we go.
There we go.
Okay, fantastic.
Now you're up. Way to go.
Okay, perfect. So good evening. My name is Carolyn Ryle. I'm the Director of the Transportation Services Division here at the region. I have Beth Brenz joining me, the Acting Associate Director from Financial Reporting and Analysis, who will be participating in part of the presentation, and Judy McPherson, who is the Transportation Coordinator working on behalf of transportation. I am aware of the city's road safety component, in addition to what Mayor Senzik spoke to around the importance of this program. So we're so pleased to be here just to provide an overview this evening. So on the agenda this evening, I will provide an overview as to what the Vision Zero Road Safety Program entails. I'm going to be speaking about the court's intermunicipal agreement, referred to as the IMA, with regards to the staff report that'll be coming to the floor subsequent after the presentation and what those changes being proposed deal with. Beth will be providing a financial overview, so the business case that was approved here as part of this program at Regional Council, and then closing the presentation with next steps related to the launch. So first, I'd like to start with community safety zones, which are also referred to as CSZs. So speeding is a primary crash factor and a leading road safety problem, often contributing to 1/3 of fatal crashes and serves as an aggravating factor in most crashes. It's fair to say that this doesn't just occur on municipal, it also occurs on the regional road network. Niagara Regional Council has the authority under the Municipal Act to pass bylaws and initiate measures to ensure the health and safety of its residents. In establishing these community safety zones, the region has this as a tool to help make our community safer. So I'm pleased to say across the regional road network, and doing an analysis, that since September of 2019, 13 schools across the regional roads have been approved as community safety zones through bylaws and are currently up and running in partnership with each of the municipalities, the Niagara Regional Police, and the school boards. The site selection for community safety zones include locations that have safety concerns or complaints. We're often targeting sensitive areas such as schools. We'll be turning our attention to parks and retirement homes in the future. So across the regional road network, there have been 38 schools identified. And again, with looking at a number of assessment criteria, looking at speeding, looking at how parents and students walk to and from school, looking at the infrastructure from sidewalks and lighting and other different variables, we were able to put a list together, and that deals with the first 13 community safety zones that were approved here within under the region. I'd like to say that out of the 13, 2 of them exist in the city of St. Catharines. We have one located at the DSB and Academy on Louth Street, Regional Road 72. There's a community safety zone that's operational. And we have a second one, St. Anne Catholic Elementary School, Main Street, Regional Road 87 currently, again, under the 13 that have been approved. So next, I'd like to talk about automated speed enforcement, also referred to as ASE. So ASE was launched in December of 2019 by the province. I'm pleased to say that Niagara Region did have a representative sitting as part of the stakeholders group that was formed as they put the legislation together that was ultimately approved by the province through the minister. The business case that we'll be speaking to shortly talked to the implementation of 4 ASE units, which will be rotated among the 13 approved community safety zones. So under the legislation, the automated speed enforcement units are to be placed at community safety zones. So the intent of our program, as we start the initial launch of it, would be to rotate these 4 ASE units across the 13 community safety zones, 2 of them being in St. Catharines. So what are we trying to target with the implementation of ASE? We're trying to deal with increased safety, especially in the schools that we have originally targeted. We're wanting to reduce speeds. So speeding was a high factor in the areas that we've been looking. We're wanting to change driver behavior, so the positive change with them being more aware of their surroundings and understanding, obviously, the different components of children and parents and others walking to and from schools. And again, in working with our partners in Niagara Regional Police on this initiative, we're wanting to free up some of these resources to have them in other areas throughout Niagara Region, assisting with other speeding and other road-related situations that we're dealing with. Any revenue collected under this municipal ASC program, according to the legislation, needs to be put forward and used towards supporting local public safety and additional and educational initiatives. So ASC in Ontario, I just wanted to provide a current snapshot to the many municipalities that have already launched ASC in their municipality since the province approval and the launch of it in 2019. You can see from Toronto down to London, there are 123 cameras that are operational and running. You can see charge volumes that we've been provided to date are 522,000 tickets have been issued for speeding above the threshold in each of these various communities. You can see if you look from Peel down to London, they started out with 1 to 2 of the ASC cameras in their designated community safety zones. And speaking with our partners, Hamilton, you can see that they started with a pilot of 2, and they're looking to increase the complement by an additional 8. So to the right of the slide, you can see the municipalities that are increasing the number of cameras from where they initially started. The region's business case, the approval that we've received, is looking for us to start with 4 units, more in line with where Durham started, and providing just where we're looking to start our program. So now if we look at red light cameras, also referred to as RLCs, this was introduced in the province back in 2000. It has been proven through the various studies since 2000 to date that it reduces right angle collisions by 25%. Right angle collisions can be serious in nature and serious enough that they can result in death. So the cameras are proven an effective means to reducing the incidences of red light running, obviously with making our roads safer. When I presented to council not that long ago, I talked to the Complete Streets assignment that's currently underway. And there is the partnership between the region and each of the 12 municipalities currently that are dealing with the Complete Streets approach. And what does that mean? It has us looking at how we're changing the car-centric dynamic to one being that's more user-friendly to all different modes of travel. And that is a large component related to active transportation. So you can see when we're dealing with red light running and trying to reduce the severity with what can happen with someone running a red light, we're trying to protect all users on the roadway. And this is an effective means, which again has been proven across the many years of study. The region's business case talks to implementing 10 red light cameras to start. There will be a report forthcoming to regional council identifying the 10 locations that have been assessed across the 400 plus intersections that we've looked at. That includes regional locations, regional and municipal, regional MTO, as well as regional and Niagara Parks Commission. This slide talks to just the general overview of the various Vision Zero or even road safety initiatives that are underway. So when we talk about the intermunicipal agreement changes, which I'll get to in a minute, that speaks more to how we'd like to expand Vision Zero or the road safety program here to deal with automated enforcement. That's ASC and red light camera. When we look at intersection improvements, geometrics to the roads, signage and pavement markings, mid-block crossings, complete streets. When you look at the speed display trailer to the right, these are all annual and capital programs that are underway at the region. And it's fair to say the municipality and the city does the same thing, similar to what the region does. So road safety is already at the forefront with how we're designing and how we're looking to improve the roadways. We're encapsulating this all under the larger Vision Zero initiative, which is now looking to expand, like I just made mention, around the enforcement piece of ASC and red light cameras. So the proposed revisions to the Niagara Region Courts Intermunicipal Agreement, the IMA. So again, why are we here today? We're looking for unanimous support across all 12 local area municipal councils for changes to the Niagara Region's Courts Intermunicipal Agreement. It's fair to say most of you are probably aware that as we've been going out to speak to each of the municipalities, we currently have one municipality that is not in support of the IMA changes that we have before you here this evening. The region is continuing with these presentations based on the approval that we received here at the region with regards to presenting the business case, and more importantly, the success of the program around the funding model, which is what we're here to speak to you about, which is inevitably in the IMA. So the Vision Zero initiative, as anticipated with the IMA, is to allow the region to lead the implementation, the oversight, the operation, and ensure the legislative compliance of the Vision Zero initiative per the legislation. And that's working in partnership with all of our municipal partners, and obviously wanting this to be a success. It's allowing for the funds, net of the court program costs related to the Vision Zero initiative, to be covered upfront. So the approval that the region received, staff received from regional council, deals with a self-sustaining model that, as part of the evolution and where we are today, was dealt with in conversation with our 12 municipal partners at the staff level on looking for a successful way to invest in this program and then to get it running and to assess it as we're continuing with the launch of it across the 3-year period, which is what we're contemplating with these changes in the IMA. Any revenue above the 50-50 split, so once the program is self-sustaining, costs have been reimbursed for the operation, any revenue would then be split according to the traditional IMA, 50 among the region and 50 among the local area municipalities, again for those dollars to be put back into road safety initiatives, which is a key priority for so many with regards to how we're trying to deal with our road safety matters. So again, why are we here today? The current IMA agreement did not identify Vision Zero and the funding model that we're here to speak with you this evening with regards to. The current agreement did not contemplate the province's guidelines for automated enforcement and its compliance piece that we need to go back to on how we're putting any revenue above ticket costs back into safety initiatives. Risks of the implementation are assumed by the region. And what I mean by that is we're dealing with stakeholder engagement. So we're looking to obviously work with our many partners that deals with EMS, that deals with local businesses that could be affected. It's our municipal partners and regional staff that all drive vehicles, obviously, so there's a clear understanding of the program. There is the significant upfront cost, which Beth will speak to in a minute, that we're assuming the risk around. There's the uncertainty, and again, these are estimates with our business case. The uncertainty around the cost recovery is something, as another risk element that the region is taking on. When we talk about opportunities, we talk about that the region is a current member of the ASC steering committee. So we're able to continue those dialogues with our colleagues and partners outside of Niagara region that are already running the program to understand how it is operating, things that they're seeing, best practices, and things that we may want to learn from. We're able to assist with the consistent delivery of the model. So that's the assessment that's working with all the partners to understand as we analyze across the next number of years, the initial launch and the success of what we're seeing and areas of where we need to pivot and change the program. We're also able to assist with the management of the resources. So this is the hiring of staff throughout the courts, as well as in transportation. And again, with different consultants that are being hired to assist us with the rolling out and the assessment of the red light camera areas, as well as ASC and community safety zones. And again, an opportunity is allowing all of us as partners to come together, understand again how, as the program is running, assess it, and then again, make changes as we see fit as we move the program along. I'm now going to pass the presentation now over to Beth to provide a financial overview based on the council approved business case.
Thanks, Carolyn. Good evening. So the next few slides that I'm going to be presented are intended to provide a high-level review of the financials, again, largely based on what Regional Council approved as part of the 2020 budget process and alignment with the changes that are proposed to the IMA. The slide provides a high-level overview of the estimated operating budget, again, as outlined in our 2020 business case. I would like to note that we are still referencing the 2020 business case, which is attached to your agenda this evening, as this is what council had approved and still materially represents the total estimated cost of the program. There are contractual increases and decreases across the expenditure lines, but the total of $4 million still fairly represents the cost of the program as presented. We are planning for the program to be self-sustaining, meaning that the total revenue collected from Vision Zero tickets will cover the cost of the Vision Zero program. The numbers shown in this slide relate to our first full year of operations, which we're now estimating to be 2023. And again, the total cost for both the courts and our regional transportation and business licensing division is estimated to be $4 million. And the $4 million, we will achieve a break even if we achieve 32,500 tickets, as outlined on the slide, 10 red light cameras, approximately 5,000 tickets, and the 4 AFP cameras, approximately 27,500 tickets. It is anticipated that the ticket revenue generated from the tickets will be enough revenue to cover both the operating and the implementation costs over the 3 years. This is another visual of the anticipated Vision Zero revenue expenditures and planned bottom line based on the first full year of operation. Again, the program is anticipated to be self-sustaining, meaning again that we'll have enough ticket revenue to offset our costs. And this can be achieved if we hit the 32,500 tickets and we have approval by all 12 local area municipalities for the amendments being proposed. The ticket revenue of $5.4 million on the slide is based on the assumption that 100% of the ticket revenue would flow through to the POA court and be 100% dedicated towards covering the cost of the Vision Zero program. And again, in order for the 100% of the Vision Zero ticket revenue to be available to cover the Vision Zero cost, we do need all 12 lands to support the recommended amendment, the IMA, in front of you this evening. If the amendments are not approved by the 12 land local area municipalities, the current IMA would remain intact, resulting in the program no longer being self-sustaining, or said another way, would not be fully funded from Vision Zero ticket revenue. I have also flagged on this slide that we're anticipating $750,000 of implementation costs to get the sites ready. It is anticipated that these expenditures would be funded from future years' Vision Zero revenue prior to any net Vision Zero revenue distribution. Some of the risks, there are significant unknowns still around the number of tickets that could be issued, challenged, and or not paid, which could require collection effort. And because we're not sure how many tickets will be challenged, we are flagging that we could see some pressure in our court trial time capacity as a result of these challenged tickets. And there is the risk that we will not collect enough ticket revenue to offset the expenditures incurred. We did touch on this in section 7 of the amendments to the IMA, whereby regional funding will be used to offset any in-year deficits to ensure no negative impact to the non-Vision Zero revenue distribution through the court, and that the regional funding will be paid from future years of Vision Zero revenue prior to any distribution of Vision Zero revenue. And to reiterate, the lands will not be expected to use any non-Vision Zero revenue distribution to offset Vision Zero deficit. And as far as opportunities, the goal of the program is to change driver behavior to reduce overall speeding on roads within the region and ultimately to improve road safety. There is an opportunity in the courts to align our staffing levels to the ticket volume experience, which will allow us to ensure we are managing expenditures effectively and ultimately maximizing the net Vision Zero program revenue for possible distribution. And if we do receive more ticket revenues collected than expenditures incurred, the net Vision Zero revenue will be distributed based on assessment, which is similar to the current IMA, 50% to the region and 50% to the local area municipalities. And again, note that future years Vision Zero revenue would need to be used first to pay back the region for any deficits that have been covered in the implementation costs. And again, as Carolyn had noted earlier in the presentation, any net revenue must be reinvested back into road safety, and we're asking for it to be reported back to the region to support our ministry reporting. I'm going to turn it back to Carolyn now.
Thank you, Beth. So in closing, just next steps. So we are finishing a number of the municipal council presentations. City of St. Catharines, this evening is our 9th. We have 3 more after this evening, and we'll be finishing off the beginning of February of 2022. This is a very important strategic initiative here at the region, and I know many of our municipalities feel the same. So the intent is once those meetings are finished, we will be reporting back to regional council with the findings of each of our presentations as it relates to the funding agreement and the amendments that were here this evening. So we're, once that's done and we've gone back to regional council with those findings and a recommendation, our intent obviously is to go back to council with another report seeking authorization to enter into vendor agreements with our anticipated launch. We're targeting hopefully still to be around Q2 of 2022. So I want to thank staff who support the program, who've been working with the region, that with the staff report that's coming to the floor, the assistance of the CAO and the director, as well as the clerk. There's been a huge amount of partnership to bring us to where we are this evening. I'm happy to open it up to answer any questions from anybody.
Okay, thank you, Director Ryle and Associate Director Breens. I go to CAO Oakes just to provide our city perspective, and then I will open up the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just very brief comments. Our staff through engineering, facilities, and transportation, along with financial management, have been working alongside the region. We fully support the initiative. This is something that achieves a variety of road safety measures that we've been trying to, and council's been looking to move forward. We do, and as Carolyn had mentioned, the original intention is for all municipal support. In the event of one or two municipalities not supporting, we are committed, and we've been talking with the region and other municipalities to continue to move this forward, which may require an additional report if that is the case, but it's definitely something that meets a lot of the strategic priority from our city traffic and engineering division. So just wanted to put that out there prior to any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, CEO Oakes. And I will say, I know the regional councillors of St. Catharines have been behind this since the beginning when Vision Zero came to regional council. And I myself have been working with Director Ryle, specifically Pelham Road has been identified as one of the areas for the speed enforcement. This is a significant delay for us if this does get delayed by one or two municipalities, because our community has been asking us for community safety initiatives. And these are the kind of initiatives that other communities, as you've seen through the presentation, have been put in place for a number of years now. We are behind providing these kind of safety initiatives. And so I hope you've been able to gather some information from today's presentation. We'll take some questions, and then hopefully there will be a unanimous decision to move forward, because anyone who wants to keep our streets safe, these are the ways and means to do it. Councillor Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, excellent presentation, Carolyn and Beth, really appreciate it. I have a couple of questions. First of Beth, I believe. If I followed the presentation correctly, you're saying that these estimates were put together in 2020, and I can understand how the revenue is very difficult to forecast because you're guessing at how many tickets and so on, but the cost should be easier to forecast. Do you feel that they're still realistic and valid if they were forecast in 2020?
For you, Mr. Mayor, we do feel that it is a fair representation of our expected cost. We did start with the cost as a baseline, and in conjunction with some of the experiences in the city of Hamilton, as well as what our courts are currently handling. So that the number of tickets was kind of like our best guess on what the volumes would be that we would expect. And then we extrapolated that to look at what would be the resources required in our court system to process those tickets. There are quite a bit of the costs are variable in nature through the MTO, the ticket processing center. It's a cost per ticket. So in those instances, it's tied pretty closely to the ticket volumes being experienced and the staffing levels in the courts, because a lot of what they're going to be doing is processing the ticket. So again, those will be driven on our actual ticket experience. So I do feel that it is the best, is the most accurate representation of what we could plan to expect with the program. I think we're asking for those first 3 years to get a real handle on what those 10 red light cameras and 4 ASD cameras will actually what the ticket volumes will result and what our costs are, and then go from there. So this really just this first 3 years is to get a better handle on what that's going to look like for us.
You're on mute, Councillor.
Thank you for that. And a couple of quick questions for you, Mr. Mayor, to Carolyn. The 10 locations in the region, will we have any input on that, or will you discuss it with us before you finalize any that are in our city? Or
through the mayor, so thank you, Councillor, for the question. So we've hired a third-party consultant who actually has been assessing the 400+ intersections throughout Niagara region. And based on a set of criteria, there will be a report coming back that will be identifying the priority of how they were assessed. So the first 10, there will be a report, and then we're happy to share those first initial 10 locations with each of the municipalities so they are aware. In addition to the municipalities becoming aware, there will be a whole education as well as obviously a communication campaign that we will be releasing to provide notice with regards to the ASC location launch as well as red light cameras.
thank you for that. And my last question through you, Mr. Mayor, to Carolyn. I was struck by the exhibit that showed Brampton having 50 cameras, as many as Toronto. I don't know if you can answer that, but it seemed totally out of whack with the rest of the municipalities.
So through the mayor, so it's fair to say that each of the municipalities, again, based on their experiences and dealing with the reviews with their own councils, that there have been just different initiatives and different starting points with regards to how this has been rolled out. I think it's fair to say that a large number of the stakeholders started out on a smaller scale, the 1 to 2, just to understand the impacts more from an operational standpoint. But it's not to say starting out with the larger number, which is what the City of Toronto did in Brampton. Their experience may be a little bit different, but that's again what they reviewed with their council and they received their approvals for. So the positive thing with being a stakeholder member is that there's best practices and learnings that all of us are continuing to understand, from those who started out with 1 or 2 cameras to those who started out with a larger number.
I'm muted again. Thank you for that, Carolyn. So that was a municipal decision, is what you're saying, to start with how many. So thank you for that. And by the way, excellent initiative. I certainly support it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garcia. Councillor Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to regional staff for your presentation. I'm really glad you came. I was worried you weren't going to come, given what happened at another municipality, which was, for me, a shocking vote. I'm really surprised that that municipality didn't want to move forward with it, and I'm hoping we can find a way. And my question relates to that. I understand you're in a working group related to administrative and monetary penalties, and the province, I don't think they've passed legislation yet, but legislation is on the table that would allow municipalities to develop an administrative and monetary penalty system to collect fines and fees, which would take it outside of provincial offenses court, which I actually think maybe would be more cost effective. It wouldn't clog up the court systems. And a lot of other municipalities are looking at the same thing. So if this was the case, and I think they're looking at this to be passed in July of this year, is that something we could work on? We don't have to worry about the fact that one municipality doesn't support this. If we were to move forward with an AMP system, then we could just move forward with the municipalities who want to buy into it. Is that an alternative?
So through the mayor, so excellent question. So there is an AMPS steering committee that has been formed, similar to a number of the municipalities that were involved in the ASC. And the region is a participant on the AMPS working steering committee. And I was in a recent meeting, so I am up to date with just where they are with that. So the intent is that they're working through, or the steering committee is working through, obviously, a process with something they'd like to bring back, obviously, to the minister, in working with the province on how automated speed enforcement, or an element of it, and it hasn't been determined yet whether it's going to be ASC red light cameras and all of it combined to start. But there are conversations on the validity of moving this into an AMPS format, which would take it out of the court. So yes, that is something that right now is underway. No decisions have been made to what that final conclusion may be. And I do know that there are conversations in trying to come together with some sort of form of what that legislation may look like this calendar year. So there's still more to come on that. With regards to the initiative and where we are today, this is an extremely important initiative here at the council. It's one of our strategic priorities with regards to transportation and how we move people and goods. The intent of the continuing of the presentations, and again, we're pleased to be here this evening, is that we're still seeking all municipal support with regards to the program. The intent of the region is to move this program along still outside of the ANTS program at this time, and there'll be further deliberation and discussions here at the region with how that will be formulated, and we'll be bringing that back to regional council with regards to next steps and how we move this forward.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't have any other questions. I just wanted to comment that I think in that same provincial legislation, there's going to be something about stunt driving. And I know the region had a motion asking for stiffer penalties, and so did we. So I just wanted the other councillors to be aware that the province is looking at that. So that's a good thing. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Porter. Councillor Kushner, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My first comment is that the presentation is very factual and very convincing, and I thank you, but I can't understand why one municipality would object to Vision Zero. Can you explain why?
So through the chair, good question. It's fair to say that road safety is a priority. I would think to all municipalities, and it was clear, in at least my understanding that evening, that road safety was something that they're obviously concerned about. It's fair to say, at least what I took away from the conversation that evening was a little bit more of the impact on what that may have to some of the municipal streets, you know, with us rolling this out on the regional road network. So I think it's fair to say that that's probably the best understanding of maybe what transpired there that I can lead with this evening. And the fact is that the region is continuing to do its due diligence in the background and how we move this very important initiative forward in light of what transpired.
Thank you. And my next question is, the purpose of this is to educate drivers and have them become more responsible. So my question is, if it becomes extremely effective, would the revenues over the next 4 or 5 years not decrease?
Through the chair. So I just want to make sure I'm understanding the question. So I just want to make sure I'm understanding the question so I answer it properly. So your question was around education and driver awareness, and would we eventually see a decrease in the number of tickets and revenue over time? Was that the question, Councillor?
Right, yes.
Yeah. So it's fair to say that the Vision Zero platform is obviously trying to decrease injury and the seriousness of fatalities to zero. That's the premise of Vision Zero, with all of the different initiatives that many municipalities are working towards. It's obviously trying to make drivers more aware. It's different entities obviously assessing the road network and what improvements we need to do, because the intent obviously is to decrease fatalities and seriousness of accidents down to zero. It's fair to say that with us just launching the program, there's going to be a lot of heavy lifting with regards to communication and education with the launch of the 10 red light cameras in the 4 ASC. It would be further down the road, still hard to gauge on, again, and that'll be something that we'll be measuring through the effectiveness of the program as we continue to expand it, as we assess it. But yes, if the program is ultimately working, we're wanting to see a dynamic where these are moving themselves down to zero. But it's fair to say that we're still far out from that point now with the launch of our program starting.
Okay, my last question, I'm not complaining, is why is the region being so generous with the municipalities in sharing the revenue 50-50?
CAO Oaks is a good negotiator.
So through the chair, so prior to us coming here this evening, there has been a lot of legwork that's been going in the background as far back as 2018. And again, this is a partnership between the region and the municipality. So we came up with a construct that we're out presenting now that talks to a self-sustaining model. That's why we're seeking the amendment changes through the IMA. And then again, the win to everybody is when the dollars are put back and it's self-sustained, the region has been reimbursed. Any revenue above that will be shared, the 50-50 split, to allow everyone to be using it towards continued road safety initiatives, which is the intent of the program. It's the intent of the program is also to work as we assess with the municipalities in expanding the program and how we would eventually work that into municipal streets in addition to the regional road network. So from the region's perspective, transportation's perspective, and working with all my colleagues on the line here, this is a partnership and it's a model that we came to collectively together on wanting to launch this to make it successful.
Thank you. I hope your colleagues in other departments come back with similar proposals.
Thank you, Councillor Kushner. Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the presenters. Just to bring it back down to basics, it's to us, we're launching a pilot program, but Vision Zero globally and in a whole bunch of other places in the world is a tried, tested program that's reduced deaths and injuries everywhere, right? This is public safety's enhanced.
Through the mayor, that's correct.
Okay. I think that just needs to be emphasized and restated because that's, you know, any elected representative worth their salt should put that at the forefront of their agenda, improving quality of life and reducing death and injury. And this has been asked a number of different ways, and I think the public might get lost in some of the acronym stuff. It seems fundamentally unfair that one or two recalcitrant municipalities can block this program from happening. How do we work around it? So if a majority or the large municipalities want to do it, we can still have it go ahead. Is it possible?
So through the mayor, so the region's intent is to move the Vision Zero program along. What we are evaluating here is with the financial model that we're out presenting on, which is the self-sustaining model that we received approval for. We will be going back to regional council with an update on what transpired through each of these meetings, where we stopped the approvals and where we did not. And then there will be recommendations coming forward on how we still move the program forward. So it's fair to say that we're still assessing that here at the region, and we will be bringing that back with the intent that this program is to continue.
Good luck stick handling around the municipalities who don't want to have this program because it should be a priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williamson. Councillor Phillips.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. And Councillor Williamson stated it perfectly that it is, we don't get too many together to vote on too many life-saving programs in an evening, and this is a very important one. But operationally, the mayor mentioned that one of the ASEs might be going on to Pelham Road. Well, I'm definitely going to slow down on Pelham Road, I guess. How long would that how long will that be on a street? Like, do you move them around after 4 months or 6 months? Because everybody in the city will know, slow down on Pelham Road, but it doesn't matter what you do on Vine Street. How often do the red lights stay where they're supposed to be on the traffic signals and the ASEs located on a certain street?
Through the mayor, so excellent question. So the implementation and the duration is something that we're still working through here in obviously in consultation with our consultants who have rolled out these programs in other municipalities. So there will be more to be shared with regards to timing and duration and what that would look like. The red light cameras, the intent is to install them at the 10. And again, we'll come back with what the duration may look like, but they will not be moved around on a short-term basis. They will stay there and we will assess them for a certain duration. What that is, again, we'll be providing that back as part of, again, just how we're rolling out the red light cameras as we bring that report forward with our consultant. With regards to ASE, we are starting the program with 4. And those will be moved around across the approved community safety zones. So they will be shared throughout the course of the year. Again, the timing, that's more in the implementation stage, which we're not at that quite yet. We will provide that back as an understanding with regards to where they are and what the duration may be. With regards to the launch of the ASC under the legislation, we need to provide notice, so transparency that they're there. There will be a warning period to let drivers know that when they're driving through it to start, if they're issued a ticket, it'll be a warning to them. And then after a certain period of time, after the warning stage, it goes into the implementation, where if you're driving through it after the warning phase, you're issued a ticket. So again, implementation is still something we're still working out. There will be reports coming back, but just logistically, how it's going to work is the 4 ASC will get rotated to start. And again, we'll be assessing with the conversation of looking how we expand the program, and red light cameras. We'll be installing the first 10. The duration will be provided with the intent, obviously, as we assess, to keep them there, move them, and how we would like to increase that program to other intersections of concern.
Thank you. And once the program is a success financially and saving lives to boot, as far as the payout to the municipalities, once there is funds available to the municipalities, how do you determine basically who gets what? Is it because the St. Catharines collected more than Vineland, and so we get more, or is it going to be split?
Through the mayor, really good question. So,
But evenly, how is it going?
Similar to the current state, is basically any revenue after court costs are covered are distributed to the local area municipalities based on residential assessment. So it doesn't matter where the tickets were issued. We take the total net revenue, 50% goes to the region, 50% goes to the local area municipalities, and then that's distributed based on your percentage of the overall residential tax assessment. So we're recommending that if we had excess Vision Zero revenue, it would be distributed in the same fashion.
Thank you. Hopefully we'll be able to get more units than just 4. It's such a large geographic area just to have 4 ASCs. I think we could have 40 of them in St. Catharines. Thank you very much. Great presentation, and good luck with your program.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips. And rounding out the order of batting cleanup, Councillor Sorrento.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Director Ryle. So to your ask, definitely, I'm just going to get to the point. Yes, I'm going to be supporting this. Now, you've mentioned a couple of times, Director Ryle, that as soon as the program becomes sustainable, self-sustaining, best guess when. I know that there's a 3-year term agreement in the report. Best case scenario, when do you see the program becoming self-sustaining, Director?
Through the mayor. So again, estimating, we're not anticipating it to be self-sustaining within the first year. We're thinking it'll be happening more within the second year, and whatever that time frame is, again, I'm estimating. But we're not anticipating it throughout the first year at this time.
Okay, and through you, Mr. Mayor, to the director, you're working with our director of engineering and our manager of Manager Green? No, Manager Appleby. Is that correct?
Through the mayor, I'm sorry, if the question was, am I coordinating with Director Martuccio and Manager Brian Appleby? Yes, I am, if that was the question.
Yes, that was the question. And then one final question through you, Mr. Mayor, to either the director or associate director Brens. Or in the report, there's something about $4 million in that the region was going to take the gross amount first, and then the net that was left over was going to be shared with the remainder of the municipalities. I see you nodding, and that's a good sign. Can you just clarify that for us, please? And that's my final question. Thank you, Associate Director Brens.
Through the mayor, happy to answer that question. You are correct. What we're trying to demonstrate on the slides was we would take the ticket revenue comes into the courts. We segregate the Vision Zero ticket revenue. We segregate the Vision Zero costs. We ensure that those are all paid. Anything that's remaining would flow through, it would stay within the provincial offenses court and would be distributed 50% to the region and then 50% to the local area municipalities based on their costs.
Great, fantastic. Thank you, director's team. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And Councillor Sorrento, no further questions. Thank you, Director Ryle, Associate Director Greens, and I forget the third person. I apologize. On the screen there. Want to just state your name again?
Judy McPherson.
Sorry, Judy.
That's okay.
Just want to say thank you for the work that you're doing as a group. Need a motion to approve the presentation first. So presentation, Councillor Phillips, seconded by Councillor Harris. All in favor of the presentation? Okay, that's carried. And now we have the staff recommendation that'll come up on the screen. And I think Councillor Porter is moving this and seconding it. Got Councillor Williamson. Okay, so here's the language that all municipalities are receiving. So they're receiving the same motion. If it is the will of council, we can strengthen the motion about St. Catharines' position on this. And I'm putting that on the table as a means to demonstrate that while we're fully committed, if there was language that wanted to be included, that would strengthen this. It is open for inclusion. Councillor Littleton.
I was just going to speak to the motion, but certainly we could say something about how we're still committed to working with the region to find a way of making this work. I don't really have the great pros tonight, but this is obviously important. I'll talk quickly. Well, maybe I'll think of some other more eloquent things to say, but I know myself, I get a lot of complaints about speeding in the city. It's probably the #1 complaint that I get, both on regional roads and residential roads. And I think that Director Ryle has gotten emails from me even because residents don't care what road it is. They just want to see it more safe. And I think that the region working so hard on this program, and thank you to all of our staff as well who are working on this, is really the way to go. And I think that we have to absolutely support this. And regardless if we lose a municipality here or there, I think it's still something that we can show leadership on and bring this to the region. And so I'm fully in support of this. Thank you.
And Councillor Porter, Councillor Littleton, your amendment is fine.
It's fine, yes, for sure. Thanks.
Okay, so we've got that on the screen. Thank you, Councillor Littleton. Councillor Kushner.
Yes, perhaps we could put something into the effect that the city of St. Catharines encourages its neighboring municipalities to do likewise.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Porter, you're fine with that amendment?
Yes.
Okay, Councillor Williamson, you're fine with both amendments? Thumbs up. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Townsend. Thank you, Councillor Kushner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I'm in favor of this. I think that thank you for the presentation from the regional staff, and hopefully we can see this get implemented. I'm wondering if we can include language in the sense that to reaffirm our commitment, but to move forward regardless of what other municipalities are going to do, and maybe have staff find a way that we can partner directly with the Niagara regional staff to implement this into our city specifically. Is that something that we can include?
I'll ask CAOs.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, essentially what we're committed to doing that specifically. We'd rather obviously do it with all municipalities. There are, as Carolyn had mentioned, there are 9 municipalities that have already been presented to. Out of the 9, I believe there's 7 who have approved. So we obviously want to work together, but we're going to do whatever we can to keep moving the initiative forward. So that's already captured within our discussions between St. Catharines and regional staff.
Okay, so then we won't need any further wording in this motion. It's already included, you're saying?
Correct. If whatever comes out of it will have to come back to council for approval because it's a different scenario. However, that's what we're working towards.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Townsend. Appreciate it. Councillor Porter, move for the motion.
I don't have much to add, and I don't know if we need to add this to the motion, but the city of St. Catharines is about to introduce some new administrative and monetary penalties of our own related to waste. The waste bylaws, we have bylaw staff and legal staff kind of already looking at that. So I don't know if this is a direction to CA Oaks. I don't know if our city staff could be included in at least starting to look at what that could look like. Because I think if the region went towards introducing an AMP system, I think the municipalities would have to come up with their own. And it might be a nice idea to even start exploring it so that we don't delay this any further. That's all I have to say.
CA Oaks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We can take that direction back. I know there's been a lot of discussions through our financial management services and planning and building on the AMPS program that we have in St. Catharines, but also across the region. So we could take that as direction for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, no further questions. I will call a question to the city clerk.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Porter.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
Councillor Townsend.
Yes.
Councillor Sorrento.
Hardy, yes.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor McPherson.
Yes.
Councillor Littleton.
Yes.
Councillor Kushner.
Yes.
Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
Councillor Garcia.
Yes.
Councillor Harris.
Yes.
And Mayor Senzik.
Yes.
Carried unanimously.
All right. Thank you very much to the presenters. Greatly appreciated. Looking forward to the next steps in this endeavor to keep our communities safe. Next, we have 9.2, which is a brief update from the CAO on COVID-19. And I'll turn it over to CAO Oaks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be very brief. We provided an update to council at the end of last week, as well as a media release on the reopening, the first phase of such. So I'm happy to announce that as of today, our city facilities are back to being open to the public. In line with provincial direction, we're following all the COVID protocols at facilities such as capacity limits, proof of vaccination, utilizing the QR codes, screening, contact tracing, masks, and physical distancing where necessary. Facilities that have opened today include City Hall for appointments, in-person appointments, St. Catharines Museum and Welland Canal Center, our arenas, our community centers, our older adult centers, and the Kiwanis Aquatic Center. In Kiwanis and some of the other facilities, we still do require reservations through our active STC for most of the programming, but it's a nice day to be able to welcome the public back to our facilities. So as we continue to move through the next steps, February 21st, there is the next level. And we'll continue to report to council and the community as those come near. That's it.
Thank you, CA Oaks. And again, just a reminder to the public, have patience when we're heading into these facilities. There may be some lineups as people get used to, again, showing your QR code with the vaccine status, plus answering some questions. So just for our public to treat our staff and security with the utmost respect. They're the ones who are enforcing the regulations. They're not the ones creating the regulations. So make sure you're treating them with the respect that they deserve as well. Any questions on this? Just need a motion to move the CAO report. Councillor Miller, Councillor Dodge, all in favor, show of hands. It's carried. Thank you. Okay, we now move on to motions. We have 10.1, and this is the one where Councillor Porter and Councillor Garcia work together on a motion. Councillor Porter is the mover of the motion since the area in effect is in her ward, St. Patrick's Ward, and then Councillor Garcia is the seconder. So this has been included in the report. I'm going to turn it over to Councillor Porter. She's going to provide some opening remarks, and I'm sure Councillor Garcia will add some supplemental to that as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. So Councillor Garcia and I each had a motion, separate motions. I think it was the last meeting, and we worked together to combine them. And so here it is. And there hasn't been much of an update from the contractor or the Ministry of the Environment, although work has been happening. And I'm just going to read the motion, and I'll reserve my comments to the end. So whereas the, sorry, I have to look at it on my own screen. Whereas the contractor for 282 and 285 Ontario Street, and that would be Peter's Group, has indicated that it's actually $150,000 of PCB mitigation has been undertaken on the subject sites over a period of 3 days in December 2021. And whereas 15,000 liters of liquid and 3 tons of sediment of unknown PCB concentration were removed from the subject sites and sent to a federally regulated PCB storage facility in Brampton. And whereas the contractor has indicated that split sampling is scheduled when weather permits, meaning that test samples are taken by both the contractors, engineers, and the Ministry of the Environment staff, and they're tested for comparison. And whereas it's been 13 months since the Ministry became aware of the discharge of PCBs flowing from 282 and 285 Ontario Street properties and other sites. I don't know if this is correct, Councillor Garcia, but there's been PCB knowledge for the last 20 years on that site, so we should recognize that, which flows into Martindale Pond, Port Dalhousie Harbour, and Lake Ontario. And whereas it's been approximately 7 months since Council received an update from the MECP about their progress, be it resolved that staff seek a timeline from both the contractor and the MECP for split testing, and that staff invite the ministry to present the work plan and split results for the subject properties to council as soon as possible, and that the ministry staff and city staff provide an update to council on the additional PCB hotspots, testing and cleanup efforts in the other known areas of concern along 12 Mile Creek. And be it resolved that staff be directed to request a copy of any manifests or reports from Canada's Environment Ministry in regards to the contaminated materials that were taken off site from 282 and 285 Ontario Street and sent to that facility, and that this gets sent to Minister Piccini and Premier Ford.
Thank you, Councillor Porter, and you'll reserve the right to speak at the end. Okay, Councillor Garcia is seconder of the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'll just mention to Councillor Porter's point that I'm sure PCBs have been around and flowing for quite a while, but this was referring to when the ministry actually reported that to us. But this is, the PCBs are a major concern, certainly for Councillor Williamson and myself. And as you mentioned, the site, the Ontario Street GM site, is in Councillor Porter McPherson's ward, but it is a major concern to us because, of course, we're at the end of the flow here. So everything that flows down 12 Mile Creek eventually flows into Martindale Pond, to Port Dalhousie Harbour, and then into Lake Ontario, which is really serious. And I mean, PCBs are particularly onerous, as we know, because they're highly toxic and they tend to accumulate in sediments and in fish and other animals. And the fish are a concern, of course, because we have a lot of people who fish both at Martindale Pond and along the harbor there. So as the motion states, we would like to get a report and update as soon as possible. And regarding the GM site in particular, in addition to the human safety aspect, the whole city is concerned, of course, because the site is such an eyesore that affects our city's image, and we need it cleaned up, and this is obviously a step in the right direction. I know that Councillor Porter and our staff under Director Kite have been working with the local staff from the ministry, and I believe Councillor Porter said she's been in communication with the contractor as well. So my objective is not to criticize them, but I know that the Ontario Auditor General recently released a rather critical report among, about the Ministry of the Environment, and in particular highlighted that the ministry does not have the required resources to deal with spills and so on. So that's why I thought it was very important to add that we want this motion and anything we get to go directly to the minister and to Premier Ford, so that if there are any resources that are required at the local level to do the proper work here, they will help us with that. So I think the motion is self-explanatory, so I will leave it at that, and I'm sure Councilor Porter will have other comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Garcia. Councilor Littleton, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know if I can ask any questions, so I'm just going to say something. And what I appreciate about this motion from Councilor Porter and Councilor Garcia is that you're talking not just about the GM lands, because I think in the reports that we've gotten from the MOE is that there's some seriously high levels near Clifford's Creek in our ward, in Councilor Miller's and my ward. And I'm very interested in seeing what is being done to clean up that. I know there's a big focus on the GM lands, but it's my understanding that the levels are even higher around the Clifford's Creek area. So thank you to Councilor Porter for putting that in the motion, that we get an update about that as well, because I think if we are serious about really being concerned about PCBs in general, we need to look at all of the areas that are flagged from the ministry. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Littleton. We do have Margaret Josipovic here, who is Manager of Planning. So if there are any detailed questions as well, Manager Josipovic will be able to answer that as well. Councilor Townsend, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, thank you to Councilor Porter and Councilor Garcia for bringing this motion forward. We do want to see get some results back and get an understanding of what is happening on the site with the PCBs. I will just echo to my colleague Councilor Garcia, who did mention that it's not only him and Councilor Williamson that are concerned. I think it's the mayor and every councilor around this table who are very concerned about the PCBs on this site. So I just wanted to put that out there, that every single councillor and the mayor are very concerned about what is happening on this site. Again, thank you to Councillor Garcia and Councillor Porter for bringing this forward, and I look forward to council unanimously supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend. Councillor Williamson, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to start with, I'm in support of any action that we can take to get the provincial government to take some action on this site and the PCB issue in general at this site and other sites locally. The only question for you I have to staff is, or perhaps to the councillors who put the motion together, the numbers, the quantities, the liters, and the dollars spent. Is that information vetted? The source of that's just want to make sure that that's been.
Councillor, I'll go to Councillor Porter, because I think this information has been shared, but the motion itself is asking for verification, I think. Councillor Porter?
Yes, I received a communication. I've been in communication with Peter's group, who's undertaking the cleanup, and they did tell me over the phone, and I've taken detailed notes, and they put in writing how much so far they've spent. They've provided a work plan to the Ministry of the Environment. And I did ask the local ministry officer who I've been talking with to also put something in writing confirming that the work plan that was submitted by the contractor to the ministry was being adhered to, and they were receiving reports, and they said they were receiving reports definitely, and they're at the point where they're ready to do split sample testing. So I got confirmation from both the ministry and the contractor that the work was done. And the reason I added the part at the end, the clause at the end of my motion, was to, all we can do is verify. They said that they'd taken these samples to a federally regulated PCB storage facility, and we're asking if we can get some manifests from that. And I do think it will be important at some point to direct staff to file a Freedom of Information request, just so the public can be assured. There's been a lot of questions, and many governments have underfunded, a series of governments have underfunded the Ministry of the Environment and other ministries. So we can't necessarily fault the local office. They do really good work, but we do want to make sure and do all the checks and balances and provide the information to our residents. That's what we can do.
Indeed, that's reassuring to me. And I won't get into a dissertation on bioaccumulation of toxins, but they do move up the food chain, and becomes a problem because we're at the top of the food chain. Well, in the mammal world, we are. So thank you for doing this, and I fully support it.
Thank you, Councillor Williamson. Councillor Sorrento.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just going to echo the comments that some of my colleagues have said, and I quite agree. I'm actually very concerned. I will tell you straight up, Mr. Mayor, this is private property, and people are complaining that the government hasn't done enough, but it's been a derelict property for well over a decade. So I'd like to know what other governments did in the past, and, to take steps to remediate this very dangerous situation. And further, Mr. Mayor, we have two other properties. This is what really kind of is a challenge to me in my thought process here. So we have two other properties, Mr. Mayor, that we know are secreting or leaking higher levels of PCBs into the community, yet certain entities, if you will.
Point of order.
I've got it. Stop. Point of privilege, Mr. Mayor. I'm speaking. I will not be interrupted. Mr. Mayor, I will not be interrupted. I've got the floor.
Yeah, but there's a point of order.
Yeah, should we be going in camera for this? This is getting a little dangerous, I think, in terms of we're talking about the city leaking toxins into the community.
I'll go to the clerk. So this is a point of order, which is allowed, Councillor Sorrento.
Thank you. I just
want to be careful.
I would suggest that the councillor be careful with his comments, or we should move it into camera if there is a question here.
Sure, Mr. Mayor.
Yep, Councillor Sorrento. So the ruling is if you are going to continue to talk about city properties or initiatives like that, then we're going to have to go in camera. So just be mindful of the direction you're going in.
Mr. Mayor, I will defer to my esteemed colleague, Councillor Porter, who I'm sure when she speaks last will definitely mention, I think, what I'm talking about and what I'm being cautioned about. And it's just very, very frustrating, Mr. Mayor. I certainly support what's going on, and through you to Manager Joseph Povek. Now, Manager, can you tell me and this council if it has been 7 months since staff have liaised with council or any of the people that are interested in this particular situation? It's been 7 months. Is there ongoing discussions between staff?
Through the mayor to the councillor, it's been 7 months since a formal presentation to council, but we do have regular meetings on a variety of the issues that we're handling there.
So just through you, Mr. Mayor, to Manager Joseph Povek. So you are having regular meetings with certain groups. We don't have to name them. Okay. And so these groups are aware of the work that staff is doing and that the owner is doing and the cleanup crews. Is that correct? Is that an accurate statement?
Through the mayor, the work is being done pretty regularly. I guess it would depend on which groups would know what, but yes, we are regularly meeting and trying to move this forward.
Okay, that's great. Okay, thank you. So, like I say, Mr. Mayor, there's certain elements of this. I'm going to be supporting this motion. There's certain elements that I do that really kind of press a button with me because for obvious reasons. So I'll let it go. Sorry for getting a little out of hand there, Mr. Mayor. I didn't hear it was point of order. I just thought I was being interrupted, which I will never tolerate again. So thank you for keeping me on track. Apologies to my colleague, Councillor Miller, and to council for getting a little hot under the collar, but I think you know where I'm coming from. Thank you so much. That's all I've got to say.
Thank you, Councillor Sorrento. Councillor Kushner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I like the wording. What it calls for is the city wants a strategy for remediating that property. And so far, we have not really seen anything. And I think that's what the purpose of the motion is, to ask not only for information, but to determine a strategy. I have one small question with respect to paragraph 1 and 2. In paragraph 1, they indicate what the cost of the PCB mitigation is. And then in paragraph 2, they talk about liters of liquid, etc., and they don't have a cost. Is there any indication what the cost of that removal was?
I'll go to Manager Josipovic, because the reason why you're starting to see numbers and volumes is because it could potentially have an impact on any brownfield remediation that would take place in that property. So
right,
I'll just go to Manager Josipovic, just in terms of if she can provide some clarity on the numbers.
Through the mayor, I think you're correct. We haven't received sort of an itemized detail outline of what each of those refer to, but I would think that, like you said, the 150,000 is specific to the PCBs, whereas the 15,000 liters can encompass more than that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kushner. Okay, final wrap up. Councillor Porter, it's your motion. You requested to speak last. The floor is yours.
Sure. I want to thank the community for their patience. The site most definitely is an eyesore, and people are frustrated because it's been sitting. It's a stain on the neighborhood, and it has been for many years. Most recently, there were a lot of calls to fire department because people were able to break in. There is still some valuable copper and things that can be salvaged in some of the buildings. So they were having a problem with break-ins, and the community obviously gets very concerned when the fire trucks are there every day. So this site does attract a lot of attention from the community. But I think other councillors highlighted the fact that we actually have a larger PCB leak in another area of the city, which was identified in 2016, and council would have been aware of that. And no councillor to this date, I think, has ever demanded the city's own work plan for that. So I think this is what the concern is, just because the GM lands are a lot more visible. It's in the news and it's in the media. Where the other site is actually our own city property from an old dump, a much more complicated endeavor to clean up, because it's harder to find the source of the PCB leak. But it's something that as council we really need to stay on, because we need to treat all of the sites fairly. And I think that's incredibly important, that when we talk about PCB leaks, there's other sites where there's PCB leaks going into the watershed. But with some of the rhetoric around the GM lands, for example, I've had PCB warning signs in my own neighborhood. I live at 1.5 kilometers away from the GM lands. And I really think it's important that we kind of stop the misinformation. We're in a pandemic, and people don't need to think that they need to live in fear of that as well, when they really don't. When we've seen letters from public health, that they didn't feel that there was an immediate threat to human health. But obviously we got to clean it up. So I just want to go over what did happen in December. I mentioned it in the motion. And I've been talking to the ministry. So split sample testing is when the private contractor, they have MTE engineering doing their own testing, and they do have their own private results that shows there's been a significant reduction in PCB leaks. They have given those to the ministry, but the ministry really needs to do its own testing. So that's what split sample testing is. They take the same samples, and the ministry takes some and the private company takes some, and they come back and compare results. And they need a dry event to do that and a wet event. The weather hasn't cooperated in the last 6 weeks, but I just heard today that they're aiming to do the first sample on Wednesday together. So that, I think that's really positive. that this is happening, and hopefully we'll get to see the results when it comes back to council. They've also are planning to finish debris cleanup over the next 8 to 10 weeks. So there are some piles of rubble were removed. There were several truckloads in a past cleanup. And so they expect that all of that surface debris is going to get cleaned up. They did work on the construction hoarding. It's taken a long time, but they've essentially secured the site with new fabric to mitigate dust. And they've put new locks on, and they've done more construction hoarding around the site. And there's a full-time site coordinator on site with a crew, which is helping with some of the issues of people breaking in and some of the illegal activities. They do have a site remediation plan. So MTE is the engineer of record for the site, and they're going to be working through a phase 1 and phase 2 environmental study on the properties. And I guess the last point is they're working on a demolition plan for some of the buildings, including the crossing over Ontario Street. And they've got to do some structural and engineering reports and reviews. But I think that the manager, Josipovich, could confirm that there's been discussions with Peter's group. I know Director Kite isn't in this meeting today. She's on vacation. I'm not sure if Margaret, you've been in some of the meetings, but they are talking to staff and working through a demolition permit. So even though it doesn't appear that a lot is happening, there is a lot happening in the background. I understand the community's concern. You know, they recently went to court again, but while that was happening, a lot of this other work is happening, and I'm guardedly optimistic that we're going to see a lot more action in the coming months. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Porter. Manager Josipovic, do you just want to confirm?
Through the mayor. Yes, there is a lot going on, and it's from various sort of aspects that all encompass this property. And like you said, there is more going on, I would say, in the last year, 6 months to a year, than there has been in a long time. So that's exciting.
That's great. That's good news, and I hope our community sees this as good news, and I hope people in the community see this as steps that are being taken. Reputable company. Peter's group is a reputable company here in Niagara, and clearly they do good work. And so I think hopefully the media will pick up on this as well and talk about the things that are being done in a positive way as we're working through a difficult property that is, as Councillor Sorrento pointed out, in the hands of the private sector. So it's harder than if we were to manage the lands ourselves. Thank you, Councillor Porter, for doing a lot of the work to get this information. It's not something that you can just simply pick up a phone call and have one conversation. There's many conversations that you're having. So I want to thank you for your leadership on getting this to where it is today in front of us. I would like to make an amendment that it does include the last paragraph, the last furthermore, that this motion and a copy also be sent to the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority. We often talk about the waterway itself that is under the jurisdiction of the NPCA. They are actually doing really good work on sampling the water course for PCBs. They have been in front of us, at least the staff have been in front of us before, talking about these results, and we're looking forward to seeing further results from their testing as well. And it is good to see the NPCA. They should be much more active in this if there are issues related to water quality, which they haven't come to council and said that there is significant issues related to PCBs. So it's important, Councillor Porter, that we include the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority on this as well.
Thanks. It really has never come up at any of their meetings. So I think there's maybe one question at a meeting about it. So I'm happy to continue to include them. Okay. And they did take our direction, and they did begin resampling, because they did stop sampling several years back. So, but we asked them to start doing it again. So I think it's important. Thanks.
They are doing it upstream over by Wellandvale, and they're doing it downstream by Port Dalhousie, where the hydro locks are. So there are points in Port Dalhousie and in St. Patrick's Ward where they're pulling from. So with that, I'll call the question and turn it over to the clerk.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Porter,
Yes.
Councillor Garcia,
Yes.
Councillor Dodge,
Yes.
Councillor Harris,
Yes.
Councillor Kushner,
Yes.
Councillor Littleton,
Yes.
Councillor McPherson,
Yes.
Councillor Miller,
Yes.
Councillor Phillips,
Yes.
Councillor Sorrento,
Yes.
Councillor Townsend,
Yes.
Councillor Williamson,
Yes.
and Mayor Sendzik.
Yes.
Carried unanimously.
Okay, so 10.2 is a motion that's just being walked on tonight. And so we got to do a couple of steps here. The one step is because it's a late motion, we need council's procedural bylaw section M64. Motions not appearing on the agenda can only be considered if council votes unanimously in favor of considering the late motion. So the motion is pertaining to a social procurement request, which was first approved by regional council. It's Councillor Garcia has taken Lord Mayor DeCero's motion and put St. Catharines in it to make it St. Catharines specific. So it has been already endorsed by the region. So if it's the will of council, we can deal with it tonight. And I'll look to the clerk in terms of, we just need a motion on the floor by a councillor to waive the rules. It's got to be unanimous. Councillor Williamson, seconded by Councillor Phillips. Okay, so all in favor? Okay, so it's not unanimous. So this will be on the agenda for the 14th of that's in February. And again, it gives us time to look at the motion. The region is working already on this. So if there's a way to tie this motion into what the work of the region is, maybe by the 14th, it'll be more of a direction to staff to be a part of the region's efforts around social procurement because the motions are the same.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor, just a question.
Yeah.
You said it wasn't unanimous. I thought everybody raised their hand. Can that be done with the recorded vote? I'm not sure.
I'll look to the clerk. I think
We could have asked for that prior to, I believe it was Councillor Sorrento that didn't have his hand up. Am I correct, Councillor Sorrento? I didn't see.
So, I've got to call point of privilege and point of order, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I really don't appreciate my name having been said publicly. Sorry, but I don't. Second is, we've already voted on this. So and correct me, Chair, I think Councilor Garcia is extremely out of order. Vote has already been taken place. So I'll look for your direction, Mr. Mayor.
Well,
It's taken place, wasn't unanimous, done deal. But no, we got to keep pushing it. You got to keep pushing it.
No. So what it is simply just asking if we could have a recorded vote. You only can ask for a recorded vote prior to a vote taking place. That being said, we're not deciding on the motion, Councillor Garcia. This motion is because it was walked on tonight. We did approve the procedural bylaws, which we don't really look fondly on motions coming to the table last minute. This gives the council the opportunity over the next week and a half to review the motion. If there's any further questions, they can reach out to you as well. So it's not about defeating the motion. It's about simply getting the motion onto the agenda properly, which will be the next meeting of council.
Totally understand, Mr. Mayor, and I will point out that I have never, ever asked for the rules to be waived. I just thought this was important. Thank you.
No, but that's what we can do still, right? We have that as part of our procedural bylaw, but what we don't want to do all the time is walk motions on. Council only saw the motion 5 minutes before the meeting itself, so I think it's healthy to be able to have a couple of days to at least look at a motion. So this will be a notice of motion up for discussion on the 14th. Thank you for bringing this forward, Councillor Garcia. And we now move on to 10.3. And again, this is a late motion. So we have to go through the same suspension of rules. This motion was brought forward by Councillor Littleton. seconded by Councillor McPherson. It's relating to the incident that occurred at Councillor Porter's house on Saturday night. So it's a reaffirmation, but again, we need to suspend the rules to do so. Councillor Dodge, you have your hand up?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, it's on another issue.
Oh, sorry about that. No problem. Okay, and so I need a motion to suspend the rules on this one. Councillor Kushner, seconded by Councillor Littleton. Okay, all in favor of suspending the rules? Councillor Williamson, you're okay?
I just haven't seen the motion, that's all.
Okay. Again, apologize.
That's my
the
fault.
motion-
I'll take responsibility for
Yeah,
that.
my guess is I'm supportive of it, but I haven't seen it, that's all.
Our point of order, can we put it on the screen? Is that possible?
Yeah, I don't know if Evan, if you can pull it on the screen. Again, the intent is dealing with the attack on Councillor Porter and her family.
Mr. Mayor, did we vote on the suspension or?
Well, Councillor Miller just asked to say, and Councillor Williamson, we're just looking for clarification. Again, just to see if there's broadly what they were looking at. So with that, I need a suspension of the rules. So all in favor of suspending the rules? Okay, I can't see Councillor Harris, so.
I'm here. I have my hand.
Yeah, your screen's black. I apologize. Can't see it. Okay, that's carried unanimously. I haven't seen anybody not voting for it. And then we will go to the motion. Councillor Littleton, if you want to introduce it.
Thank you. And my apologies truly to my colleagues. I should have sent this to you earlier today and I have never walked one on, so I didn't know. So I'll just read it for you. Whereas violent attacks, online harassment, and physical intimidation of politicians and government employees is on the rise and is something we have witnessed firsthand in our community. And whereas we, as the St. Catharines City Council, condemn the latest violent act against Councillor Porter and her family and want our community to know that such acts are unacceptable and will not be tolerated within our community. And whereas everyone should be free from harassment in their workplaces and their homes, therefore be it resolved that we, as St. Catharines City Council, call on Niagara Regional Council and all lower area municipalities in Niagara to add their support to condemning these acts of violence, harassment, and intimidation against elected officials and government employees, and be it further resolved that we endorse the work currently being done by the Federation of Canadian Municipalities with the express intention to end harassment against politicians, as well as the FCM's commitment towards gender parity in Canadian politics. And be it further resolved that we endorse the continued work by the Association of Municipalities of Ontario with its We All Win campaign, which aims to encourage, a little bit of editing there, which aims to encourage in the upcoming 2022 municipal elections that we have the inclusion of a variety of candidates of different genders, ethnicities, sexual orientation, ages, races, and ability. So thank you to Councillor McPherson. She brought this forward and we worked on this together and it's before you for your consideration tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Littleton, and Councillor McPherson, you're seconding this.
Yes, I am.
Would you like to speak to it?
I'll be brief. I mean, I'm coming from the outside. This is my first meeting, and so I apologize for walking something on and a short notice. But from my perspective, I've kind of watched over the last year or so the violence and kind of harassment of public elected officials be on the increase. And when something like this happens, I think it's really important. Certainly from my business, it's important to be supportive of your coworkers. And in this case, we are coworkers. And I think it's really important that all the elected officials across the region also play a role and say enough is enough and this isn't acceptable. I mean, we can all have differences. We can all have different opinions, but ultimately it's about working together to make our community better. And that's why I'm supporting this motion.
Councillor McPherson.
Thank you.
And Councillor Williamson.
Did you call me?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I totally support this. It's anything we can do, even if it's symbolic, to speak out against this kind of a appalling and cowardly act is it's important for us to do. We've seen this past weekend a lot of behavior that crosses the line, and then when it happens to one of our colleagues in their family home, it's just it just completely obliterates the line. And it's uncivilized behavior. It's un-Canadian, and it's just wrong on all fronts. And yeah, and Councillor Porter does know that, and anybody who's a victim of this, but particularly right now with that situation, we support you, and we just got to prevent this from happening. Anything we can do to prevent it from happening, it's worth trying. Thank you.
Well said, Councillor. Thank you. Well said. Okay, with that, I will call the question. All in favor? Show of hands. Unanimous. Well done. Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Littleton and Councillor McPherson. And it calls for notice of motion. So we do have a notice of motion that will be on the council agenda. Report requests, if you can get them in before the 14th. And gonna go to committee update, board updates. So I know Councillor Littleton on the library board. You have an update, and then I'll go with Councillor Dodge.
I do. I just have a exciting thing from the library board last week. We met and we had presentation from the consultants who are doing redesign and rebranding of the library. This is all in conjunction. You've heard me talk about rooftop reading area for quite some time, but this is all in conjunction together under the leadership of Ken Sue. And so on Thursday, we voted to change the logo of the library. So you're going to see some really exciting new branding that's going to come out with some new coloring. It's really beautiful. And so I just wanted to let everyone know that, and the community know as well, that will be happening shortly.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Littleton. Councillor Dodge, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a little report on, we had AMO this past week, and I just want to update you guys on a couple of things. AMO's provincial budget submission has been approved and is now available online. Protect together, recover together. With a focus on physical stability and submission advocates for a professional budget that focuses on 4 themes. 1, AMO seeks a provincial budget that continues to address pandemic-related municipal costs with ongoing intergovernmental cooperation and investment, a budget that does not impose new unfunded responsibilities upon the municipality and builds for the future, accounts for inflation and cost-sharing programs, Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund allocations, and provincial payments in lieu of taxes, and monitors the impact of future property assessment updates for any significant shifts between classes or property taxpayers. And then you touched on this earlier. AMO also had a very extensive meeting about engaging with the Ontario government on housing affordability with ongoing communication and collaboration through the AMO board and AMO Housing and Planning Task Force, the MOU table, the Provincial Housing Affordability Task Force, and the Housing Summit and Roma Housing meeting scheduled for January 2022. AMO is calling upon the provincial government to continue working with municipalities and the federal government to develop more housing to address affordability and to help end homelessness in the province. And on all housing related matters, AMO will continue to highlight municipal priorities to guide provincial and federal investments, legislation, and other measures. And then we had a conference update. AMO decided to hold off on opening registration at this time, releasing the conference room block until early in 2022 as COVID again has continued to present some uncertainty. AMO staff continue to plan and remain optimistic that AMO 2022 will be able to be a meet in person this August. Final decisions will be made at the March 25th meeting of the AMO board, after which the conference will be officially launched. And then our large urban caucus met as well. And we had robust conversation again about all the things that we discussed at AMO beforehand. So that would be just a little update for you.
Thank you, Councillor Dodge, and thank you for continuing to be an important part of the AMO board. And the AMO conference is in Ottawa again this year.
That's correct.
Let's hope that the convoy is long gone by then.
Yeah, and Mr. Mayor, I'd also like to thank Director York and Melissa for their support in helping me through this.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, we have motion to receive and file the minutes of the advisory committees of council as presented. Have a mover and a seconder. Councillor Phillips, seconded by Councillor McPherson. All in favor of the minutes? Councillor Garcia, got your hand up. Just do you have a report you want to give?
Mr. Mayor, just a very brief update to say that the wonderful staff at the Performing Arts Center are already working feverishly on being able to take advantage of the fact that the 50% capacity is coming back on, and it's got to be so hard for this group, because they put the plan together, they're ready to go, and they bring people in, and now all of a sudden we're closed again. So I want to thank you for all their hard work, and I know we'll all be hearing about the programs they're coming up with. Thank you.
Well said, Councillor. Well said. It's good to see the PAC and the Meridian Center coming back with some folks that are coming through there. All right, Councillor Phillips. So he's doing a silent. He's doing the silent rendition of something.
Sorry. To go along with the Performing Arts Center reopening, the Niagara Symphony will be starting their conference or their concert series over again. They've got some really good concerts coming up to meet the appreciation of all the residents, not only the Masterworks series, but they have a concert coming up with the songs of the band Chicago coming up, and Joni Mitchell, not the Joni Mitchell, but there'll be a soloist from Toronto coming in to sing the songs of Joni Mitchell, which will be an outstanding show. So I encourage the residents who are watching to explore that and to support the Niagara Symphony. We're so fortunate to have them with us. Thank you.
Great update. Thank you, Councillor Phillips. Motion to approve the bylaws listed on the council agenda A through F, save and accept bylaw D, be read a first time, considered and passed. I emphasize that for Bonnie, just so save and accept D. So we're not approving D. Okay, need a motion to approve the bylaws. Councillor Miller with the fanciest glasses. Councillor Dodge, you're seconding it. All in favor? Carried. And looking for adjournment. So when I started, I think Councillor Phillips had glasses and Councillor Kushner had glasses. Now we all have glasses. This is just, I think it's the pandemic because we're all staring at screens all the time. Anyway, motion to adjourn. I have Councillor Townsend without glasses. And who else doesn't have glasses? Is Councillor Townsend the only one? No, Miller, you're done.
I do too, though.
Councillor Kushner, he doesn't have glasses anymore. All in favor of the adjournment.
Or you get glasses for your birthday.
You're the inspiration, a great Chicago song.
Have a good one, folks. Take care. Nice to see you all.
Good night, folks.
Love those boys.